Chapter 431. Yi Tianxia's sudden attack came as a surprise to the warriors of the omniscient sect. Although Yi Tianxia looked arrogant and impulsive on the outside, he was still rational. Now that Yi Tianxia attacked Chu Xiu without saying a word, it was because he was angry, extremely angry. However, this anger was not directed at Chu Xiu, but at the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. Yi Tianxia had always been regarded as the future heir of the omniscient sect and the hope of the sect's rise since he started cultivating. Even the sect master was polite to him. As a result, the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult rejected him just now, and she even insulted him in public. This almost made Yi Tianxia lose his mind in anger, and he was about to attack. Fortunately, under the persuasion of the other warriors of the omniscient sect, Yi Tianxia still retained some rationality and did not make a move. However, he just happened to meet Chu Xiu, and Chu Xiu spoke as if he did not care about him. This made Yi Tianxia immediately explode, and he directly charged at Chu Xiu with the blood flood dragon in his hand. In other words, he needed a fierce battle to vent his anger. Otherwise, Xiaofan, whom Yi Tianxia thought was a liar, would not be worth fighting personally. Chu Xiu frowned as he looked at Yi Tianxia, who was charging toward him. He had not dealt with Yi Tianxia before, but logically speaking, he had only killed Xiaofan. Why was the other party so angry as if he had killed his father? Did he cultivate the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra or the Furious Diamond Heart Sutra? However, since Yi Tianxia wanted to fight, Chu Xiu did not mind accompanying him to the end. This time, killing Xiaofan was very important to Chu Xiu, but in fact, Chu Xiu did not do much. With so many of his subordinates working together, it was too easy to kill Xiaofan. So now Chu Xiu did not mind stretching his muscles. Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance was unsheathed, and the dark ink-like demonic energy and blood-red murderous aura condensed. The saber will of the three blades of Avicii condensed and slashed down. It was as if the gates of hell had opened, and the power was extremely violent. A loud bang rang out as Chu Xiu's heavenly demon dance collided with Yi Tianxia's blood flood dragon. Immediately, an extremely powerful shockwave erupted. Demonic qi and gang qi scattered in all directions. Chu Xiu and Yi Tianxia took several steps back, and the ground under their feet began to crack as they retreated. They were evenly matched. Yi Tianxia had refined the Blood Flood Dragon Inner Elixir and cultivated the Blood Flood Dragon Heart Sutra. In terms of physical strength, he was actually stronger than Chu Xiu. Even if Chu Xiu had the Great King Kong divine power, he was no match for Yi Tianxia in terms of physical strength. However, in terms of the quality of genuine qi, Chu Xiu was stronger than Yi Tianxia. His cultivation was a combination of Taoism, Buddhism, and the devil. Even most warriors in the oneness of heaven and man realm could not compete with Chu Xiu in terms of the quality of genuine qi. Therefore, the battle just now was actually a situation where they were evenly matched. However, the figures of Chu Xiu and Yi Tianxia moved again, and then they began to fight and slash crazily. Chu Xiu's blade momentum was extremely fierce and domineering, while the blood dragon in Yi Tianxia's hand was even fiercer. Yi Tianxia had cultivated the cultivation method of ferocious beasts, so when he fought, he was like a ferocious beast. Seeing the two people fighting like this, the other warriors of the extreme evil sect wanted to help, but Tanya and the others were watching from the side. If they dared to make a move, Tanya and the others would immediately stop them. The only one present who was qualified to intervene in the battle between these two people was the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. Logically speaking, she came with Yi Tianxia, and she should be on Yi Tianxia's side. However, now the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult was sitting on the Black Panther, watching the battle between the two people as if she was watching a show, and had no intention of intervening. Seeing that the two people were fighting at a critical moment, she was even stroking the silky hair on the head of the Black Panther under her, as if she was interested. The Black Panther under her was also squinting at this time, shaking its head to cater to the touch of the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. It did not look like a magical Black Panther, but more like a coquettish kitten. At this time in the field, Chu Xiu and Yi Tianxia exchanged more than 10 moves back and forth. Both sides were evenly matched in terms of strength, and the power of the battle left everyone dumbfounded. These two people did not look like warriors of the Five Qis origin realm at all. Even most masters of the unity of heaven and man realm might not necessarily be as powerful as these two people. At this moment in the fierce battle, Yi Tianxia had vented a lot of the anger in his heart. Chu Xiu also narrowed his eyes and said, "It's time to end it." As soon as Yi Tianxia frowned, he saw Chu Xiu's hand forming the inner binding seal, and his speed soared to the extreme in an instant. Almost in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind him. Yi Tianxie snorted coldly. He was indeed not good at things like speed, but Yi Tianxie's martial arts was to break all things with strength. As long as the strength was exerted to the extreme, what was the use of speed? The blood dragon in Yi Tianxie's hand swept out, and the scarlet spear aura circled around him. He even let out a fierce roar similar to a dragon's roar, and the spear aura was like a blood dragon swimming around. He thought that his defense was impeccable, and it would be useless no matter where Chu Xiao attacked from. Who would have thought that Chu Xiao would pinch the lion seal with his hand at this time? In an instant, the sound of Buddha's voice exploded like thunder. It was as if it resounded in Yi Tianxie's ears, causing him to let out a muffled groan. The spear in his hand could not help but show signs of collapsing. At the same time, Chu Xiao's hand formed the perfect treasure bottle seal, and in an instant, the light in his hand shone brightly, fulfilling the wishes of all living beings, blooming supreme light. When the perfect Aquarius seal landed, it completely shattered Yi Tianxie's spear aura. Chu Xiao's strength was never just reflected in one point. In terms of strength, Chu Xiao could fight with Yi Tianxie to the point of being evenly matched, but Chu Xiao could completely change his method and defeat him in other areas. In the series of exchanges just now, Yi Tianxie almost subconsciously thought that Chu Xiao in front of him was a person of the devil's path. In the end, in the blink of an eye, Chu Xiao displayed such a powerful and authentic Buddhist method, and it directly caught Yi Tianxie off guard. Chu Xiao's figure did not stop, and both of his hands formed the great Vajra wheel seal at the same time. But at this time, Yi Tianxie, who had recovered a little, let out an angry roar, and the long spear in his hand was placed horizontally in front of him, bursting with a decisive force and smashing toward Chu Xiao. A loud bang rang out as Chu Xiao's great Vajra wheel imprint slammed into the blood serpent, causing a loud explosion. Yi Tianxie's hands couldn't help but feel numb. Even the power of the blood serpent's blood qi dissipated a little. But before he could counterattack, a strange change happened to Chu Xiao, who was facing him. At this moment, Chu Xiao's eyes became as dark as the abyss. The moment Yi Tianxie looked into Chu Xiao's eyes, his body could not help but tremble, and his mental strength was instantly pulled into that abyss. The art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul transfer was almost impossible to escape in such a sudden attack, and Yi Tianxie was no exception. However, Yi Tianxie still had an advantage, and that was his strong qi and blood, which was enough to stabilize his mental strength. Moreover, his current state was very strange. After refining the blood dragon's Niden, his body contained a trace of the blood dragon's aura. The moment he was hit by the art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul transfer, the blood dragon tattoo on Yi Tianxie's chest began to heat up, and a dragon's roar broke through Chu Xiao's art of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth and soul transfer, completely waking Yi Tianxie up. But at this time, two powerful Buddhist lights bloomed in front of him, and two powerful great Vajra wheel seals fell. At this time, Yi Tianxie could only hurriedly block, but the blood dragon in his hand was directly blown away by the two great Vajra wheel seals by Chu Xiao and stabbed into the ground. The warriors of the evil pole sect all raised their eyebrows, and they were extremely nervous. Ever since Yi Tianxie stepped into the Jianghu, this was the first time his weapon was directly blown away by someone. The holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult looked at Chu Xiao with a strange look in her eyes. It was very rare in the Jianghu to be able to switch between the devil and Buddha so easily. Even though the sixth demon sect cultivated both the devil and Buddha, in fact, the cultivation methods of the sixth demon sect were of the same nature. Whether it was the devil or the Buddha, they mainly cultivated mental strength. As for Chu Xiao, the mental energy cultivation method he used previously was a demonic cultivation method, while the Madra law he used now was a Buddhist cultivation method. One was a mental energy secret technique, while the other was a powerful and heavy Buddhist sect Madra law. These two things were completely different, but Chu Xiao was able to change them so smoothly and freely. There were very few people in the Jianghu who could do this. At this moment, Yi Tianxie's expression finally changed a little. He attacked Chu Xiao because he wanted to fight and vent his anger after being humiliated by the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. Only now did he realize that although he had vented most of his anger, he had kicked an iron plate. His weapon was blown away, but Chu Xiao on the opposite side threw a punch. He did not have a weapon, and neither did Chu Xiao. Of course, Yi Tianxie knew that this was not because Chu Xiao deliberately wanted to be fair, but because Chu Xiao's close-range killing technique was not inferior to his saber technique. The punch condensed boundless killing intent and murderous aura, even staining the surrounding chi of heaven and earth with a scarlet color. There was a faint sound of ghosts and gods crying in the fist momentum. Sky extinguishing, earth annihilating fist. Yi Tianxie did not have a spear in his hand. He also roared and directly punched out. The fist momentum was straight, and gang energy erupted. A blood-colored dragon shadow wrapped around his arm and roared out. His arm was a spear, the blood dragon spear that could pierce the sky. There was a loud bang. Everything around had been covered by endless blood-colored gang energy, and the scene inside could not be seen clearly. But in the next moment, a figure was blasted out and retreated more than 10 steps. His face was pale, and even the blood dragon tattoo on his chest had become extremely dim at this time, as if it had lost its spirit. Chapter 432. Yi Tianxie stared at Chu Xiu, unable to believe that he had been defeated. Although he was only at a disadvantage and the injury he suffered was not even a minor injury, Yi Tianxie knew that he had already lost. From the beginning, Yi Tianxie's goal was the few outstanding young talents in the righteous sects, such as Zhang Qingzhen and Zhong Xian. He had always regarded these people as his imaginary opponents. Although he had heard of Chu Xiu's name a long time ago, Yi Tianxie had never regarded Chu Xiu as an opponent. Now, he was defeated by Chu Xiu. This kind of complicated feeling was absolutely impossible for outsiders to understand. At this moment, the Holy Lady of the Moon-worshipping cult said in an impatient tone, "Yi Tianxie, have you fought enough? If you have, leave quickly. Don't forget where you are. This is not your evil sect, nor my moon-worshipping cult." Since Zhang Chufan was dead, what was the point of them wasting time here? Whether it was Yi Tianxie or the Holy Lady of the Moon-worshipping cult, they had no intention of avenging Zhang Chufan. The land of Eastern Qi was the most prosperous place in the martial arts world. Whether it was the moon-worshipping cult or the evil sect, their power here was limited. There was not much meaning in continuing to dawdle here, except for the risk of swaggering through the market. Yi Tianxie glared at Chu Xiu, but he was not stupid enough to say anything. Instead, he turned around, pulled out the blood dragon that had been sent flying by Chu Xiu, and turned to leave. Before the Holy Lady of the Moon-worshipping cult left, she also glanced at Chu Xiu, but there was a look of interest in her eyes. In fact, she was indeed very interested in Chu Xiu, even more so than Yi Tianxie. Looking at the back of the group of people leaving, Chu Xiu did not say anything. Chu Xiu was confident that he could defeat Yi Tianxie, but the strength of the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult was somewhat unfathomable. Even Chu Xiu could not tell if she had reached the unity of heaven and man realm. Therefore, if she wanted to leave, Chu Xiu would certainly not stop her. Anyway, his goal had been achieved. This group of people also came for Zhang Chufan. Fortunately, he was one step ahead. If the people of the evil extreme sect and the moon-worshipping cult got hold of Zhang Chufan, they would get the true inheritance of the Demon Heart Hall from his mouth and confirm his identity. Then, Chu Xiu's identity in the Yinma clan would not be able to be hidden anymore. At this time, Tanya suddenly stood behind Chu Xiu and chuckled. "Lord, that holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult is interested in you." Without turning his head, Chu Xiu asked, "How do you know?" Tanya pretended to be an experienced person and said, "The premise for a woman to have a good impression of a man is curiosity. Obviously, she was very curious about you just now. The two of you are very likely to be together. In the legends of Jianghu, those holy maidens do not marry and are as pure as ice and as clean as jade. However, if they meet the person they like, it will be like dry wood and raging fire. Once it starts, no one can stop it. Lord, I feel that you are very likely to abduct this holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult and then write a Wulin love story." Chu Xiu turned his head, glanced at Tanya and said, "Do you believe such a melodramatic thing? If someone really abducted the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult, the next day he would be chased by the moon-worshipping cult and even the entire Ming Mo clan in Jianghu. At the same time, he could experience Yi Xiaonan's heaven-mending heart sutra and Eastern Emperor Tai's sky-burning mirror. Also, those cliché stories of poor boys eloping with the young ladies of aristocratic families were just as ridiculous. Being well-matched in social status wasn't just a joke, especially for those big aristocratic families. Their daughters could stay unmarried for the rest of their lives, but they definitely couldn't marry a penniless poor boy. I heard from the Ghost Hand King that you have nothing to do during this period of time. Don't tell me you have been reading these boring Jianghu romance stories all day long? If you really have nothing to do, I can also find something for you to do. After all, Guanxi is so big. If you want to find something, it is still very easy. Tang Yi secretly cursed that the Ghost Hand King was secretly snitching on him. He quickly waved his hand and said, "Don't worry, Lord. I have a lot of things to do, and I'm almost too busy." Chu Xiu waved his hand and let the others leave with him. He did not continue to argue with Tang Yi. In fact, Chu Xiu knew what Tang Yi's current state was, but he did not care, and he did not want to care. Chu Xiu only had two attitudes towards his subordinates. One was ability, and the other was obedience. As long as one was capable and could obey Chu Xiu's orders, Chu Xiu dared to give them everything they wanted. As for the rest, Chu Xiu did not want to interfere with the hobbies of his subordinates, and how they behaved. After the matter was settled, Chu Xiu did not want to stay in Eastern Qi any longer. After all, this was not his territory, and there were no big shots in Lun County. It was not a big deal for him to kill people here, but if he ran into people from big forces who did not like him, he was afraid that it would be another conflict. Just when Chu Xiu was resting in the inn at night, a familiar fluctuation suddenly came from outside Chu Xiu's window. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows, and without alerting anyone, he directly concealed his breath and walked out of the door. Not far from the inn, Mr. Lu stood outside the forest next to the inn. His aura was condensed, and he frowned as he looked at Chu Xiu. At present, Mr. Lu's cultivation had condensed to the extreme, and he was only one step away. To be precise, he was only half a step away from stepping into the realm of Martial Dao Grandmaster. Mr. Lu was here because of Zhang Chufan. Zhang Chufan was so high profile in Eastern Qi, so naturally, the phaseless demon sect had also received the news. It was just that they did not receive the news earlier than Mei Qinglian. Moreover, Chu Xiu's identity as the successor of the Demon Heart Hall was not widely known, and only a few people in the phaseless demon sect knew about it. Therefore, when some of the disciples of the phaseless demon sect heard that Zhang Chufan claimed to be the successor of the Demon Heart Hall, they did not pay much attention to it. It was not until Mr. Lu, who was in closed-door cultivation, unexpectedly heard about this that he felt that something was wrong. He immediately stopped his closed-door cultivation and immediately came to find Chu Xiu. Since this Zhang Chufan claimed to be the successor of the Demon Heart Hall, who was Chu Xiu? It should be known that the Kunlun Devil Cult had been destroyed for so many years, and there were many people who knew about the Kunlun Devil Cult now. However, if you were to ask them who was in the Kunlun Devil Cult, almost 99% of them would be confused. They could not even tell whether the Kunlun Devil Cult had 4 Demon Lords or 8 Demon Lords in the past. The Demon Heart Hall was just a branch of the Kunlun Devil Cult in the past. It could not be said to be weak, but it could not be said to be strong either. It was not very famous, and except for some sects or forces that were related to the Kunlun Devil Cult in the past, no one else would know about it. However, Zhang Chufan knew about it now. He was a warrior who was born as a lone cultivator, and had never even stepped out of Eastern Qi in his life. Yet, he knew about the Demon Heart Hall, and he even revealed his demonic skills. This made Mr. Lu suspicious. When he arrived at Antai Prefecture, he found that Zhang Chufan was already dead. There was not even a trace of him left, and his body had been disposed of by Chu Xiu's men. Mr. Lu did not need to think too much. Chu Xiu, who was far away in Guangzhou, had suddenly appeared here and mobilized all the forces under his command to kill Zhang Chufan. This was enough to explain everything. There was a long silence. Mr. Lu did not speak, and neither did Chu Xiu. The atmosphere was extremely oppressive. At this moment, Mr. Lu suddenly said something superfluous. "Zhang Chufan is dead?" Chu Xiu nodded. "He's dead. He's completely dead. There's not even a trace left." Mr. Lu nodded and suddenly asked, "Does the Saintess know about this?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "It was the Saintess who told me about this. Otherwise, why would I pay attention to these things in Eastern Qi?" There was another moment of silence. Mr. Lu's expression did not change, but his eyes were a little erratic. After a long while, Mr. Lu said, "I heard that you fought with Yi Tianxia of the Omniscient Sect today? How did it feel?" Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "His strength is not weak, but it can only be considered good at best. 90% of his strength comes from external forces. The inner elixir of the Blood Flood Dragon and the Heart Sutra of the Blood Flood Dragon can indeed bring him great strength, but Yi Tianxia has not found his own martial arts path. As for the top few on the Longhu leaderboard, Zhang Qingzhen's Thunder, Zhong Xian's Madra, and Feng Qishao's Sword, They all have their own martial arts paths. Today, I can defeat Yi Tianxia once. If we fight again in the future, I will be able to kill him. But the real problem is not Yi Tianxia, but the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult. That woman is not a simple person. Mr. Lu nodded and said, none of the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult is simple. You are right not to provoke her. Take care. Senior Wei Shuya and the others will not know about this, and there is no need for them to know. I just hope that you will not let the Yinma clan down. Mr. Lu did not even ask whether Chu Xiu was real or not. For him, the result of this matter was already obvious. He had made the same choice as Mei Qinglian. It could be seen from the seemingly messy conversation between them. Zhang Chufan was already dead. Not even his remains were left. Even if he was real, he was now fake. Only the living was real. He believed in Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu was still the rising star of the Yinma clan. He could compete with the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult and the heroes of the righteous path. If they lost Chu Xiu, the Yinma clan would not be able to fight against these people. They would not even be able to find a young talent who could defeat Yi Tianxia. Therefore, at this time, whether Chu Xiu was real or not was no longer meaningful. As long as Chu Xiu's existence was beneficial to the Yinma clan, then he was real. Also, since it was Mei Qinglian who informed Chu Xiu about this matter, it proved that Mei Qinglian already knew all this and had already made a choice. In this case, Mr. Lu felt a little more confident. Some things did not need to be so serious. It was rare to be confused. It was good for everyone. Chapter 433. With Mr. Lu's visit, Chu Xiu's crisis could finally be considered to have passed. Mr. Lu and Mei Qinglian could basically represent the attitude of most of the Yinma clan towards him. In addition, they were the only ones who knew Chu Xiu's true identity. It could be said that as long as he dealt with them, everything would be over. He led them all the way back to the Guanzhong torture room. Chu Xiu arranged for the others to go back first, while he went back to the main hall to report. On one hand, he greeted Guan Xiu. Of course, the most important thing was to greet Mei Qinglian. Chu Xiu hadn't gone to find Mei Qinglian yet. After receiving the news that Chu Xiu had returned, Mei Qinglian went straight to Chu Xiu's guest room to find Chu Xiu. Raising his eyebrows, Chu Xiu said in surprise, "Holy maiden, aren't you afraid that someone will see you here in broad daylight?" Mei Qinglian said lightly, "Don't worry. In the backyard of the torture hall headquarters, no one dares to say anything. Let's talk about your matter. Has everything been settled? Has your butt been wiped clean?" Chu Xiu nodded and said, "That guy is already dead. Not even his dregs are left. Mr. Lu also came to find me. The matter has been completely resolved." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mei Qinglian also breathed a sigh of relief. After all, she chose to stand on Chu Xiu's side at that time. If Chu Xiu had screwed up and an accident had happened, his identity would have been exposed by the Yinma clan. Then she would also have been in trouble. However, Mei Qinglian still sneered and said, "To be honest, this is the first time I've seen such a bold guy like you. You actually dared to play such a trick in front of so many senior experts of the Yinma clan. You really have no limit to your courage." Chu Xiu said lightly, "Sometimes, the boundary between what is true and what is false is not important. The result is the most important. Isn't the current result good? The news from Eastern Qi has arrived. Saintess, you can find out what kind of person Zhang Chufan is. Letting him be the successor of the Kunlun devil cult, the face of the Yinma clan, is a disaster." Mei Qinglian nodded. She had to admit this point. Although she had never met Zhang Chufan, she knew that there were not many in the martial world who could be compared to Chu Xiu. The Yinma clan was already in decline. Without Chu Xiu, where could they find another martial artist who could be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list? At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly said, "By the way, this time the evil pole sect also made a move. They also wanted to recruit Zhang Chufan, but they were a step too late. I beat them to it. I fought with Yi Tianxia of the evil pole sect, but what surprised me the most was that the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult was with the evil pole sect at this time. Has the relationship between the moon-worshipping cult and the evil pole sect become so good? Moreover, my strength is stronger than Yi Tianxia, but I still can't see through the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult. Among the younger generation, her strength is enough to be ranked in the top 10 of the Longhu list, maybe even in the top 5. Mei Qinglian said disdainfully. Do you think the evil pole sect is worthy of being brothers with the moon-worshipping cult? They should be completely licking their boots. Not to mention the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult, even if the evil pole sect sent out an emissary, the evil pole sect would have to treat them politely. Also, the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult is not to be trifled with. After all, the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult is a secret technique in the moon-worshipping cult. Even the leader can't cultivate it. Only the saintess is qualified to touch it. But you don't have to worry too much about her. The saintess of the moon-worshipping cult is famous now. In the past, when the Kunlun devil cult was strong, many demonic sects had saintesses, saints, and so on. This was also learned from the Kunlun devil cult. Since the Kunlun devil cult is already known as a holy cult, it's normal to have saints and saintesses. It's just that the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult is a bit special. The selection is the strictest, and the status of the saintess of each generation is very high. However, the saintess of each generation is also very short-lived. Even if they have stepped into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm, no one can live more than 50 years old. In my opinion, it's probably because the cultivation method of the holy maiden of the moon-worshipping cult is flawed. Although it can create a powerhouse above the martial Dao Grandmaster level in a short time, it will seriously affect their lifespan. Mei Qinglian's tone was very disdainful of the evil pole sect, but she didn't have a good tone with the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult. Chu Xiu secretly guessed that Mei Qinglian was jealous. After all, they were both women, and they were both demonic path saintesses. However, although the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult was temporarily weak, her status was higher than Mei Qinglian's. After all, one was alone, while the other was backed by the moon-worshipping cult. Of course, Chu Xiu also suspected that Mei Qinglian was jealous that the saintess of the moon-worshipping cult was younger than her. Of course, Chu Xiu wouldn't say this out loud. Otherwise, he would really become an idiot. Mei Qinglian snorted softly and said, "All right, I won't talk to you anymore. You've been back for so long. Go and see Guanxiu first." After saying that, Mei Qinglian turned around and left. In the past, when Chu Xiu returned to the Guanzhong torture room to report the situation, Guanxiu was very indifferent. As long as Chu Xiu won the reputation of the Guanzhong torture room, that was enough. He would be rewarded and punished. The process was very simple. However, this time, Guanxiu didn't talk about rewards and punishments. Instead, she looked at Chu Xiu, who was standing in front of her, and frowned. After a while she asked, "You said that you went to Eastern Qi to kill the remnants of the devil cult and spread the name of the Guanzhong torture room. But in the end, why did you slaughter the Yang family of the Antai prefecture and fight with the people from the evil pole sect?" Chu Xiu's expression didn't change as he said, "The Yang family is the accomplice of the remnants of the Kunlun devil cult. If I don't destroy the Yang family, I won't be able to kill them. They will continue to cause trouble for me. When that time comes, I won't receive praise from the pugilistic world, but ridicule. As for the evil pole sect, I didn't take the initiative to cause trouble for them. Instead, the people from the evil pole sect suddenly went crazy and attacked me." Guanxiu rubbed the space between his brows and said, "Chu Xiu, don't think that the Guanzhong torture room is now stable and can be considered a top figure in the pugilistic world. In reality, the Guanzhong torture room is still not stable enough. We're just sitting on the edge of a volcano. Sitting in the middle of the three countries, the Guanzhong torture room is also trying to survive in the cracks. Naturally, we should develop steadily and keep a low profile. It's a good thing that you've spread the name of the Guanzhong torture room, but at the same time, you have to control the degree of this prestige. This time, you went to Eastern Qi with great fanfare to destroy the Yang family and destroy the evil pole sect. Remember, don't do this kind of thing in the future. Otherwise, if something big happens, even I can't protect you." When Chu Xiu heard this, he nodded and didn't refute. Guanxiu of the Guanzhong torture room was a man of his word. He just had to listen to what he said. As for whether he would do it or not, that was not certain. Moreover, Chu Xiu had discovered a flaw in Guanxiu's character. It wasn't exactly a flaw, but his way of doing things was too conservative. It was true that Guanzhong was in the middle of the three countries, but the Guanzhong torture room didn't need stability. They needed to jump out of this crack. Otherwise, if something unexpected happened and the three countries went to war again, the unlucky one would be the Guanzhong torture room. It could be said that the safety of the entire Guanzhong torture room was in the hands of others. It was abnormally dangerous. Guan Xiyu knew all of this, but he didn't want to solve it. Perhaps this had something to do with his character. In the past, Chu Kuanga had laid the foundation for the Guanzhong torture room, and Guan Xiyu had completely carried forward and stabilized the Guanzhong torture room with this foundation. But it seemed like he could only do this much. It seemed like Guan Xiyu couldn't do what Chu Kuanga had done to open up the Guanzhong torture room to a new level. However, this wasn't a problem that Chu Xiu should worry about. He couldn't be bothered to worry about these things for the Guanzhong torture room. At this moment, Guan Xiyu suddenly said, "You came back a little early this time." Chu Xiu said in surprise. "Early?" Guan Xiyu nodded and said, "There is something that requires you to go to Eastern Qi's Wu County again. If you had come back a little later, I would have asked someone to bring you a letter. Then you wouldn't have wasted time going back to the Guanzhong torture room. Now, you have to go to Eastern Qi again." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "If there is something in the torture chamber, as a subordinate, I should do my best." "Did something big happen in Eastern Qi?" Guan Xiyu shook his head and said, "Actually, it's not a big deal. The Luo family of Wu County, one of the 9 great families, wants to have a martial arts competition to find a spouse. They sent an invitation to the Guanzhong torture room to attend the ceremony. In the Jianghu, it's inevitable to socialize. The Guanzhong torture room doesn't want to offend the Luo family of Wu County, so naturally, we have to send someone there. You have a great reputation in the Jianghu, and you are also the Guanxi torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room, so this kind of thing needs to be done by you." At this point, Guan Xiyu made a rare joke with Chu Xiu. She said, "I heard that you are good friends with Luo Fei Hung of the Luo family of Wu County. Although that girl has a strange temper, her strength is not bad, and her looks are not bad. She is also the eldest daughter of the Luo family of Wu County. This time, the Luo family is holding a martial arts competition to find a spouse. If you can marry Luo Fei Hung, it will be a good story." Chu Xiu ignored Guan Xiyu's joke, but this news shocked Chu Xiu. Why did Luo Fei Hung suddenly start a martial arts competition to find a spouse? In the original plot, she should have been forced to marry Xiahou in the future. Thinking of this, Chu Xiu suddenly guessed something. It seemed that this matter really had something to do with him. Xiahou Wujiang had died in his hands during the righteous and demonic battles on Mount Fuyu. So who could Luo Fei Hung marry? Even if the Luo family of Wu County wasn't strong and needed to curry favor with Xiahou, it was still one of the 9 great families. Luo Fei Hung was also in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Without Xiahou Wujiang, it could be said that no one from the Xiahou family was worthy of Luo Fei Hung, and the Luo family of Wu County wouldn't be so idiotic as to marry Luo Fei Hung to an ordinary disciple of the Xiahou family. Therefore, from the moment Xiahou Wujiang died, the plot changed. However, Chu Xiu still didn't understand. If the Luo family of Wu County could think of such a cliché martial arts competition to find a spouse, were they really worried that Luo Fei Hung wouldn't get married? Chapter 434. Many people in the pugilistic world used martial arts competitions to find a spouse, but most of them were used by small aristocratic families. There were also many young people with potential among the rogue cultivators. Some of the descendants of small aristocratic families were disappointing. However, if they had a beautiful daughter, they would use the method of martial arts to find a spouse. They would choose a young warrior with potential to marry their daughter. At the same time, it could also help their family in the future. However, with the Wu County's Luo family's influence and Luo Fei Hung's strength, did they need these things? Chu Xiu couldn't help but wonder, the Wu County's Luo family is also using martial arts competitions to find a spouse? If an itinerant cultivator really wins the competition, would the Wu County's Luo family really dare to marry Luo Fei Hung to an itinerant cultivator? Guan Xiyu shook her head and said, "Of course the Luo family wouldn't do such an idiotic thing. This so-called martial arts competition for a spouse is very suspicious. At the very least, the people the Luo family invited are the outstanding disciples of various aristocratic families. With them, how can an itinerant cultivator stand a chance? However, I heard that Luo Fei Hung did something outrageous and angered the Luo family's elders. That's why the Luo family wants to marry Luo Fei Hung as soon as possible. Moreover, this time, Luo Fei Hung has no choice but to marry. The Wu County's Luo family's strength has been declining in recent years. Not only is the older generation of martial artists getting old, But there is also no one in the younger generation who can shoulder the responsibility of the family except for Luo Feiheng. That's why the Luo family is so anxious to get married. In this martial arts competition for a spouse, the Wu County's Luo family even invited the heir of the Shongshui Ying family, young Master Peerless, Ying Bailu. According to the news, the Luo family has long been in contact with the Ying family. If there are no accidents, this martial arts competition for a spouse is just a show. In the end, the winner will definitely be Ying Bailu. This so-called martial arts competition for a spouse will become an engagement ceremony to show the pugilistic world that the Luo family also has external help, and an extremely strong one at that. Chu Xiao frowned slightly. Things had changed too much. How did the Ying family of Shongshui City get involved? Among the 9 great clans, the Shongshui Ying clan was the current leader of the 9 great clans and also the one with the longest history. In fact, the Shongshui Ying clan had existed even before the great calamity of the ancient age. Legend had it that the Ying family of Shongshui had the bloodline of the ancient imperial family. However, for some reason, the Ying family had set up a rule that forbade their disciples from having anything to do with the imperial court. It was said that thousands of years ago, there was a collateral disciple of the Ying clan who walked out of the Ying clan of Shongshui and founded a dynasty. However, when he wanted to turn the entire Ying clan of Shongshui into a royal family, the Ying clan expelled this disciple from the Ying clan's genealogy and sealed off the clan. It was not until the dynasty was destroyed that the Ying clan reappeared in Jianghu. The Shongshui Ying clan had a very long history, and they had countless trump cards. All these legends only served to increase the mysteriousness of the Shongshui Ying clan. As for whether they were true or not, no one knew. However, there was no doubt that the Ying clan of Shongshui was truly very powerful. For the past thousands of years, there had been almost no one who could match up to them as the leader of the 9 great clans. The current successor of the Ying clan of Shongshui, Ying Bailu, was also an outstanding person. It was said that when Ying Bailu was born, a white deer came to the Ying clan with the 7-colored Ganoderma in its mouth. With the 7-colored Ganoderma, Ying Bailu built his foundation, and that was how Ying Bailu got his name. The white deer was an auspicious sign. An existence like this who was born with auspicious signs would definitely not be an ordinary person. Whether this was true or not, probably no one other than the Ying clan of Shongshui knew. However, it was undeniable that Ying Bailu was indeed a genius. At the age of 2, he was already familiar with ancient books of poetry. At the age of 5, he was able to recite the Ying clan's secret royal heavenly treasure records backwards. At the age of 12, he stepped into the innate realm. Things like bottlenecks were practically non-existent to Ying Bailu. What was even more amazing was that Ying Bailu was not only accomplished in martial arts. He was also proficient in other areas such as poetry, astrology, military strategy, and so on. Therefore, Ying Bailu's nickname was Young Master Unparalleled. In terms of comprehensive abilities, Ying Bailu could be said to be unparalleled in the world. Right now, Ying Bailu was ranked 5th on the Longhu leaderboard, just above Chu Xiao. However, most people felt that Ying Bailu's ranking was a little low. It was because he had fought too few times. Otherwise, Ying Bailu would definitely be ranked in the top 3. Also, Ying Bailu wasted most of his time on researching all sorts of things, delaying his martial arts cultivation. Otherwise, Ying Bailu might have become a martial arts grandmaster by now. Of course, it was mostly women who thought this way. In the pugilistic world, Ying Bailu was still very popular. At the very least, he was very popular among women. In his previous life, Luo Feiheng was forced to marry Xiahou Wujiang. In the eyes of the Luo clan, Luo Feiheng was probably only worthy of marrying Xiahou Wujiang at that time. In this life, although the Luo clan's status did not change, Luo Feiheng's status had changed a little. Back at the World Sword Sect Conference, Luo Feiheng teamed up with Xia Xiaolu and Mo Tianlin to fight against Xiahou Wujiang. Luo Feiheng could be said to have shone brilliantly. Therefore, he successfully entered the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, and his value also rose. At that time, Luo Feiheng could only be worthy of the Xiahou clan. But now, in the eyes of the Luo clan, Luo Feiheng's achievements were almost worthy of the Shongshui Ying clan. Moreover, Xiahou Wujiang was also dead, so the Luo clan clung to the Shongshui Ying clan. This move made Chu Xiao sneer in his heart. From the top to the bottom of the Luo clan, except for Luo Feiheng, if everyone in the Luo clan thought this way, then the Luo clan would not be far from complete decline and destruction. If any aristocratic clan reached the point where they had to use their own children to ensure their status through marriage, then they would really be at the end of their rope. Among aristocratic clans, marriage could only play the role of icing on the cake. Both parties used the relationship of marriage to cooperate with each other. Moreover, the bloodline of the martial artists from aristocratic clans would not be too bad. Therefore, marriage with an aristocratic clan of the same strength could also ensure their bloodline to be strong. But if someone regarded marriage as a necessary life-saving means, then it would really be a joke. It was simply wishful thinking to rely on marriage to solve the problem because one's own family was not living up to expectations. There were so many sects and aristocratic clans in the Jianghu, but none of them relied on marriage to maintain their status. Seeing that Chu Xiu did not speak for a long time, Guan Xiu said, "What's wrong? Are you really interested in Luo Fei Heng? If you are really interested, then you can personally participate in the joust for a spouse. You will still have a chance if you participate." The Wu County's Luo clan and the Shangshui Ying clan should have preliminary contact, but they have not formally discussed it yet. There should be a problem somewhere. Otherwise, the Wu County's Luo clan would not have invited us to watch the joust for a spouse, but the engagement banquet of the two aristocratic clans. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "I and Luo Fei Heng are just friends. I don't think that much for the time being. Moreover, even if I really go on stage, the Wu County's Luo clan will probably go back on their word." Guan Xiu raised her eyebrows and nodded. That's true. Guan Xiu understood what Chu Xiu meant. Since the Wu County's Luo clan wanted to rely on marriage to ensure the Luo clan's status, then they had to choose their marriage partner well. Although Chu Xiu was not weak, his reputation in the Jianghu was not very good. Most importantly, Chu Xiu came from the Guanzhong torture room. In theory, the Guanzhong torture room was much stronger than the Wu County's Luo clan, at least several times stronger. However, the Guanzhong torture room was far away in the Guanzhong Pass, which was located in the middle of the three countries. It was not very strong outside. Therefore, if something happened to the Wu County's Luo clan, the Guanzhong torture room would definitely not be able to help the Luo clan. However, aristocratic clans like the Xiahou clan and the Ying clan were already strong. Moreover, they were both in the Eastern Qi. The benefits of a marriage alliance with them were obvious. Chu Xiu cupped his hands and said, "In that case, I will take my leave. I will go to the Wu County's Luo clan tomorrow." Guan Xiu nodded and said, "Don't worry. This time, it's just a ceremony. It's not a big deal." Chu Xiu nodded. However, he still chose to leave for the Wu County's Luo clan the next day. With Luo Fei Heng's personality, it was obvious how she would face this joust for a spouse. If she did not cause a scene, Luo Fei Heng would definitely not let it go. On the surface, Chu Xiu was Luo Fei Heng's good friend. He was also a member of the 9-branch hall. Xie Xiaolu, Mo Tianlin, and the others would probably come. Therefore, Chu Xiu could not ignore it. The sooner he went, the sooner he could discuss it. Therefore, after leaving the torture hall's headquarters, Chu Xiu did not even return to the Guanxi region. He directly sent a constable to the Guanxi region to report the news, and he went to the Wu County's Luo clan alone. This time, he came to attend the ceremony. Since that was the case, it was useless to bring his subordinates. The Wu County's Luo clan would not allow so many people to enter the clan. The Wu County was located in the southeast of the Eastern Qi. This place was surrounded by mountains and rivers, and the scenery was beautiful. It was famous for being fertile and could be considered as the center of the Central Plains. The Wu County's Luo clan was the largest force in the entire Wu County. Moreover, their reputation as one of the 9 great aristocratic clans had spread throughout the Jianghu. This time, the Wu County's Luo clan's joust for a spouse attracted many people to watch the show. Of course, they were only here to watch the show. Probably not many people would dare to enter the arena. It must be known that Luo Fei Heng used to be in the top 10 of the Longhu list. It was only recently that he was suddenly pushed out of the top 10 by a marquis Wen Lu Fengxian, who suddenly appeared on the list. Therefore, a martial artist who was worthy of Luo Fei Heng must be qualified to be on the Longhu list. What would the others do? Would they just embarrass themselves? The Luo clan's Luo clan manor was located beside the Nanluo River, which passed by the Wu County. The scenery was beautiful, and the qi of heaven and earth was rich. Looking at the Luo clan's manner and the martial artists coming and going, Chu Xiao could not help but shake his head. The Luo clan looked as glorious as ever, but in reality, he could feel the Luo clan's declining spirit from the Luo clan's martial artists coming and going. Chapter 435. As one of the 9 major aristocratic families, the Luo clan from Wu County was once glorious. However, the world was full of ups and downs. Even a dynasty was constantly changing, let alone a family like the Luo clan from Wu County. Therefore, it was normal for the Luo clan from Wu County to be weak. According to what Chu Xiao knew, there was only one martial Dao master in the entire Luo clan from Wu County. It was the patriarch of the Luo clan from Wu County, and he was probably not young anymore. Meanwhile, Luo Feiheng's father, Luo Tianyang, was the patriarch of the Luo clan from Wu County. He was only at unity of heaven and man. At this moment, Luo Tianyang was the one taking care of the guests at the entrance of the Luo clan from Wu County. In all fairness, Luo Tianyang was doing quite well. He looked like he was in his 40s. He had a short beard and a handsome face. Even though he was a little old, his charm was still the same. In fact, one could tell just by looking at Luo Feiheng. Someone who could give birth to a daughter like her would definitely not look too bad. If the difference was really huge, Luo Tianyang might have a butler with the surname Wang. However, in this pugilistic world, one couldn't rely on one's looks to solve all problems. Even if one was as handsome as Lu Fengxian, the reason why he was able to ascend to the dragon and tiger rankings was because of the ancient halberd in his hands and not his looks. Among the 9 major clans, those who could assume the position of clanmaster were almost all martial Dao grandmasters, just like Xiahou Zhen. However, when the 5 major aristocratic families had a meeting, Luo Tianyang was standing among a bunch of martial Dao masters. The situation was extremely awkward. It was like a chicken standing among a flock of cranes. Therefore, although Luo Tianyang looked good, there was an aura on him that could not be concealed. It was a humble aura. It could even be said that if Luo Tianyang wasn't here to welcome the guests, most people would have mistaken him for a butler instead of a family head. At this moment, Chu Xiao saw a familiar face. It was Mo Tianlin. Mo Tianlin walked in front of Chu Xiao. When he saw Luo Tianyang, Mo Tianlin walked over and cupped his hands. "Greetings, Uncle Luo." Luo Tianyang beamed at Mo Tianlin and said, "So, it's Tianlin. Not bad. Your cultivation has improved again. It seems you are not far from the 5 cheese origin stage." Luo Tianyang's attitude towards Mo Tianlin was quite good. Initially, the Luo family was prepared to unite with the Mo family through marriage, and Mo Tianlin was also his prospective son-in-law. However, Mo Tianlin was a little disappointing. After getting familiar with Luo Feiheng, he felt that he would never be able to control a woman like her. So, he successfully turned her into a good friend, and the matter was left unsettled. Mo Tianlin said politely, "Uncle, you flatter me. My strength is not worth mentioning. If I were to fight with Feiheng now, I probably wouldn't even be able to take a few moves from him. By the way, where is Feiheng? Why would Feiheng want to have a martial arts competition for a spouse?" The corner of Luo Tianyang's mouth revealed a trace of an unnatural smile. A grown girl should get married. Feiheng isn't young anymore. Since she doesn't want to, she can only rely on the family to help her. However, she isn't feeling well today, so she didn't come out. Mo Tianlin frowned and said, "Not feeling well? Then I'll go see Feiheng." Luo Tianyang quickly waved his hand and said, "No, Feiheng can't see guests right now." Just when Mo Tianlin was about to say something, Chu Xiao walked over and sneered. "Luo Feiheng isn't feeling well? Even an idiot wouldn't believe you, Master Luo." He wasn't injured for no reason, and there were no hiccups in his cultivation. Yet, a 3-flower realm warrior said that he wasn't feeling well. Do you believe this? In any case, I don't believe it. When Mo Tianlin turned around and saw Chu Xiao, his eyes lit up. Sometimes, it was obvious that Chu Xiao's words were much more effective than his. In other words, it was much more convenient. Just like what was happening now. The Mo family had a good relationship with the Luo family. The 2 families had been friends for generations. Mo Tianlin was a junior, so naturally, he couldn't say much. However, Chu Xiao was different. He had nothing to do with the Luo family. Luo Feiheng was his good friend, but Luo Feiheng's father was not. Moreover, according to Chu Xiu's knowledge, Luo Feiheng hated her father like an enemy. Luo Tianyang looked at Chu Xiu and frowned. Who are you? Chu Xiu took out the invitation to the Guanzhong torture room and threw it to Luo Tianyang. He said faintly, Guanzhong torture room, Chu Xiu. As soon as he said this, everyone present subconsciously looked at Chu Xiu. Even Luo Tianyang felt a little pressured. When facing Mo Tianyang, Luo Tianyang could still put on the airs of a senior. However, when facing Chu Xiu, Luo Tianyang could not do so. Chu Xiu was ranked 6th on the Longhu leaderboard. Although he was only at the 5 Qis gathering to the origin stage, he had killed more than 1 or 2 warriors at the unity of heaven and man realm. Moreover, some of them were even stronger than Luo Tianyang. In other words, it would be very easy for Chu Xiu to kill Luo Tianyang if he wanted to. However, although Luo Tianyang felt pressured, this was the Wu County's Luo family. No matter how strong Chu Xiu was, he couldn't show off in front of the Luo family. Therefore, Luo Tianyang immediately snorted and said, Chu Xiu, Luo Feiheng is my daughter. I naturally know her situation. This time, you are all here to watch the ceremony. The Luo family will welcome you. However, if you want to cause trouble, then don't blame the Luo family for being rude. Hearing this, Chu Xiu sneered. Luo Feiheng is your daughter? You are really a failure as a father to betray your own daughter. Everyone present saw that there seemed to be some conflict here, and they all came over to watch the show. In fact, everyone quite agreed with what Chu Xiu said. The underworld was only so big. Who didn't know each other? They all knew about the Luo family's bullsh**. Speaking of which, even the others felt pity for Luo Feiheng. She clearly had potential and strength and was even in the top 10 of the Longhu list. However, just because she was a woman, she had to give way to a man. It was really somewhat pitiful. However, although it was pitiful, everyone also knew that the Luo family's choice was considered normal. If the Luo family was strong and ranked in the top of the 9 great families, then Luo Feiheng could naturally be the eldest daughter of the Luo family without any worries. Not to mention the forced marriage, Luo Feiheng could marry whoever she wanted as long as there was no problem with her taste. However, with the current situation of the Luo family, Luo Feiheng naturally became a sacrifice. After all, no one in the underworld had heard of a female patriarch. In the underworld, there were female patriarchs, such as sects like the Yu Nu Palace. However, such sects were always in the minority. Luo Tianyang shouted angrily, Who are you accusing of betraying their daughter? Chu Xiu, I respect you as an envoy from the Guanzhong torture room and a good friend of my daughter. I will give you some face, but don't go too far. At this moment, another disdainful voice was heard. You dare to talk but don't dare to do it? Your Luo family is clearly selling their daughter, but now you dare not admit it? If you have the ability, call Luo Feiheng out. I want to see what she has to say. As the crowd split apart, a young man with a long blade on his back and a cold expression walked over. Flying Feather Blade, Xie Xiaolu. The people present almost instantly recognized Xie Xiaolu's identity. After all, he was a regular on the Longhu list and a good friend of Luo Feiheng. Now, 3 people stood out to interrogate Luo Feiheng's whereabouts. Moreover, all 3 of them were elites on the Longhu list. Behind them stood Xiangyang's Mo family, Guanzhong torture room, and West Chu's World Alliance. This level of power was difficult for Luo Tianyang to resist. The most important thing was that the Luo family was not strong enough so they could not be forceful. At this moment, another person spoke. However, it was not to support Chu Xiu, but to target Chu Xiu. The 3 of you are really funny. Senior Luo is Luo Feiheng's biological father. Do you think he will harm Luo Feiheng? It's normal for Luo Feiheng, as a girl, to find it inconvenient to meet him. However, the 3 of you are here pestering him. What are your intentions? Nie Donglu walked out from the crowd, holding a jade folding fan in his hand. He had a faint smile on his face, but there was a hint of coldness in his gaze when he looked at Chu Xiu. Ever since he failed to kill Lu Fengxian in northern Yen, he and Chu Xiu had shed all pretense of cordiality and formed an irreconcilable enmity. Since that was the case, he naturally did not need to feign civility with Chu Xiu in front of others. It was already a show of restraint that they did not curse or attack each other. The heavenly demon dance in Chu Xiu's hand hummed softly. The next moment, he grabbed it and pointed it at Nie Donglu. Nie Donglu, last time in northern Yen, I couldn't find a chance to kill you because your father was there. Now, you've jumped out of your own accord. Do you dare to fight to the death? Nie Donglu was not angered by Chu Xiu's attitude. He said calmly, Chu Xiu, if you want to fight, I'll naturally keep you company. However, we are both guests at the Luo residence in Wu County. How can we fight here? Chu Xiu sneered. Nie Donglu was still the same. Even though he had become Han Baxian's disciple, he had not learned Han Baxian's domineering manner. If he wanted Nie Donglu to fight face-to-face, he would have to wait until Nie Donglu was absolutely confident. At this moment, the surrounding people looked at Chu Xiu and the others as if they were watching a show and did not mind the matter blowing up. Chu Xiu and the others, who had caused a ruckus due to Luo Feihong's incident, had already attracted a lot of attention. Now, Nie Donglu had popped up. Who else would appear later? However, the crowd soon realized that there would not be a fight this time. That was because a dignified old man in a white robe walked out of the Luo residence. He looked at Chu Xiu and the others and said coldly, Everyone, I don't care if you are Luo Feihong's friends or some other relationship. Today is the day of the Wu County's Luo residence's marriage contest. If anyone dares to cause trouble here, don't blame me for bullying the weak. Chapter 436. The person who came out was the Luo family's patriarch, a martial Dao master who did not have much of a presence. That's right, although he was a martial Dao master, he did not have much of a presence in the Jianghu. The Luo family's patriarch was not famous in the Jianghu when he was young. As a disciple of the Luo family from Wu County, one of the 9 great clans, he did not even make it onto the Longhu leaderboard, let alone the honor leaderboard. The Luo family's patriarch had barely stepped into the martial Dao master realm when he was about to enter his old age. It could be said that it was extremely difficult. However, no matter how weak a martial Dao master was, he was still a martial Dao master. The Luo family's patriarch's appearance was enough to suppress Chu Xiu and the others. At that moment, a tall, muscular old man suddenly walked out and said, Luo Junyan, the Luo family has gone too far this time. You want to hold a martial arts competition for Luo Feihong's spouse. Can't you even show your face? Although the aura of the old man who walked out was not as strong as the Luo family's patriarch, he was on the same level as him. He was also a martial Dao master. Everyone was stunned, but they also recognized who this martial Dao master was. He was the previous pavilion master of the Divine Armament Pavilion, the crafting grandmaster Mo Yezi. Since the last Divine Armament Conference, Mo Yezi had joined forces with the Hidden Sword Villa to repair the demon sword longing. He had been criticized by many people in the Jianghu, so he had not appeared in the Jianghu for a long time. In reality, compared to the Hidden Sword Villa, Mo Yezi's goal was much simpler. He was a crafting master, and his life's goal was to refine weapons that surpassed his own limits. The demon sword longing was one of the 3 great demon weapons of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. It was the pinnacle of the world's famous swords. To be able to repair a demon weapon of this level, let alone the Hidden Sword Villa, Mo Yezi might even cooperate with the demon Dao. However, although Mo Yezi was a martial Dao grandmaster, he was a martial Dao grandmaster who could not fight. Everyone in the Jianghu knew that crafting grandmasters from the Divine Armament Pavilion had cultivation. After all, how could they refine weapons without martial cultivation? Ordinary flames would not be able to melt those extremely hard materials. Only by infusing true qi into the flames could it be done. However, cultivation was cultivation, combat strength was combat strength. Martial artists from the Divine Weapon Pavilion could not even be called martial artists, because they usually did not even know a single martial skill. They only had cultivation, but they did not know how to fight. Therefore, Mo Yezi's strength as a martial Dao grandmaster was somewhat lacking. He probably couldn't even defeat a martial artist at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. The Luo family's ancestor frowned. Mo Yezi, what are you doing here? Today was the day of the Wu County's Luo clan's marriage contest. The Wu County's Luo clan had invited people to attend the ceremony. Of course, they would not invite Mo Yezi, who was no longer the Divine Weapon Pavilion's pavilion master. Moreover, those who could come here were basically the younger generation of martial artists. There were not many older generation martial artists who came here to watch this kind of bustle. Mo Yezi said, "I'm here for Luo Fei Hung. Her blood spear red kite is my proudest work. It has a chance to become a divine armament in the future. I don't care how you treat Luo Fei Hung. That's your family's business, but I can't let my red kite fall into someone else's hands. I'm going to check on Luo Fei Hung. I have to make sure she's okay." Looking at Mo Yezi, the Luo family's ancestor felt a headache coming on. Facing a grandmaster crafting grandmaster like Mo Yezi, Luo Jianyan could not beat or scold him. After all, Mo Yezi was the former master of the Divine Armament Pavilion. Although he had stepped down, his relationship with the Divine Armament Pavilion was still there. Offending Mo Yezi was the same as offending the Divine Armament Pavilion. Moreover, Mo Yezi had forged countless weapons over the years. He had also made a lot of connections. If these people were to make a move, even the Wu County's Luo clan would feel pressured. The Luo family's ancestor was helpless. Mo Yezi had forged weapons for so many people. Why did he treat Luo Fei Hung differently? Mo Yezi, what do you want? This time, Luo Fei Hung will not participate in the martial arts competition. The final winner of the arena will be the son-in-law of the Luo family, so she cannot be seen now. Mo Yezi said, "It's just a marriage contest. It's not like she's already married. What kind of rule is this? When I forged the red kite, I didn't take a single cent from the Wu County's Luo clan. What's wrong? You thanked me so many times, but now you're turning your back on me?" The Luo family's ancestor had a helpless expression. In fact, people like Mo Yezi were the most hated in the pugilistic world. Although they weren't strong, they had a lot of connections. They couldn't be touched. In the end, the Luo family's ancestor waved his hand and said, "All right, if you want to go, then go." Luo Tianyang wanted to say something, but the Luo family's ancestor glared at him. At this time, Mo Yezi pointed at Chu Xiao and the others and said, "These kids are Luo Fei Hung's friends. They will go with I." Since he had already let one in, he didn't care about the second. Therefore, the Luo family's ancestor waved his hand and asked someone to bring them to see Luo Fei Hung. When the surrounding people saw that there wasn't a fight, they were disappointed. They thought that there would be a show to watch. On the way, Mo Yezi looked at Chu Xiao and the others and said, "It's not bad for that little girl Fei Hung to have friends like you. The Luo clan has gone overboard this time. They used their own daughter in exchange for an uncertain future. Although it will be of some help to the Luo clan, it seems a little too despicable." Chu Xiao and the others nodded. They also knew that Luo Fei Hung had a good relationship with Mo Yezi. In the past, the Luo clan had asked Mo Yezi to forge the blood spear red kite for them. It was Mo Yezi who went against everyone's opinion and gave the red kite to Luo Fei Hung. He also said that the red kite could only be used to its fullest in Luo Fei Hung's hands. After that, Mo Yezi treated Luo Fei Hung very well. He treated Luo Fei Hung like his own daughter. This wasn't just because of the weapon, but also because the two of them got along very well. During the previous God Weapon Conference, Chu Xiao and the others could only enter the Mirror Lake Manor after the God Weapon Conference officially started. However, Luo Fei Hung could enter the Mirror Lake Manor earlier. He ate and drank there as if he was one of them. Unfortunately, Mo Yezi's backing was useless to Luo Fei Hung because he was just a weapon-forging grandmaster. When asking for help, a weapon-forging grandmaster would naturally be respected. Their status was even higher than that of a martial Dao grandmaster. However, at such a critical moment, a weapon-forging grandmaster was obviously not as important as a normal martial Dao grandmaster. Luo Jianyan was willing to give Mo Yezi face, but he wouldn't cancel the martial arts contest just because of Mo Yezi. At this time, Mo Yezi suddenly looked at Chu Xiao and transmitted his voice to him. "The saber in your hand is the weapon that I forged using arrays during the God Weapon Conference?" Chu Xiao nodded and said, "Yes, it is. I still have to thank Grandmaster Mo Yezi for laying the foundation for my Sky Demon dance." Mo Yezi shook his head and said, "No need to thank me. I originally wanted to use this weapon to test the method of forging using arrays. Moreover, I also wanted to use it as a shield. You being able to obtain it is a testament to your strength. Moreover, from the looks of it, you even added some materials to it, causing the demonic chi in it to increase. It's stronger than what I expected, and it also has the potential to become a god weapon. However, The demonic might of your weapon is a little too strong. You need to control your heart. Otherwise, the demonic qi will easily corrode your heart and affect your mind. Chu Xiao smiled and said, a weapon is a weapon, after all. It's only a weapon when held in the hands of a person. Otherwise, it's just a pile of scrap metal. If a person is affected by a weapon, then it only proves that the person using the weapon is too useless. Just like when the righteous and demonic Dao sects fought on floating Jade Mountain, the Wind Cloud Sword Mound took out the famous Decimating Abyss. In the hands of others, the Decimating Abyss is the current era's Decimating Abyss. However, in the hands of a peerless powerhouse like Donghuang Tai, the so-called Decimating Abyss is simply a joke. The Decimating Abyss was easily refined into a Burning Heaven saber by him using the Burning Heaven mirror, and he can do whatever he wants with it. Mo Yezi looked at Chu Xiao in surprise, and a strange look appeared in his eyes. He hadn't expected that Chu Xiao would actually see things so clearly. Mo Yezi's habit was to let the weapon choose the person. In the eyes of most people, Mo Yezi believed that the weapon was more important than the person. However, in reality, Mo Yezi believed that only a sufficiently powerful person was qualified to control a sufficiently powerful weapon. Otherwise, if the two clashed, not only would the weapon not be able to display its power, but it would also cause the cultivator to be affected by the weapon and even suffer a backlash. The Luo family member who led the way brought everyone to a pavilion next to the Luo family's ancestral hall. When they saw the door, everyone present immediately frowned. The surroundings of the pavilion and the door were covered with arrays. Clearly, they were afraid that someone would escape. What did the Luo family mean by locking up Luo Fei Hung here? Did they treat her as a prisoner? The Luo family's disciples waited outside. When Chu Xiao and the others pushed the door open and entered, they saw a strange scene. Luo Fei Hung was actually sitting there with his legs crossed, holding a novel and eating sunflower seeds. He seemed to be very leisurely. Chu Xiao fixed his eyes on the book cover. The 3 words, Wind Moon Calamity, were written on the cover. There were also a few half-naked and enchanting women drawn on the cover. Just by looking at them, one could tell what the content of the book was. When he saw Chu Xiao and the others arrive, Luo Fei Hung threw the book down and said in surprise, "Why did that bunch of old farts let you in?" "Oh, Senior Mo, you're here too. I understand now. I reckon that old fart let you go because he cared about Senior Mo's face." However, at this moment, Mo Tianlin frowned and said, "Are you injured?" Although Luo Fei Hung looked leisurely, her face was a little pale. The aura of the 3-flower realm at one's prominence was also a little erratic. Anyone could see that she was currently seriously injured. Chapter 437. At this time, Luo Fei Hong was locked up here, and she was seriously injured. Everyone could almost guess what was going on. Mo Tianlin frowned and asked, "Who did it?" Luo Fei Hong said disdainfully, "It's that trash, Luo Tianyang. If he wasn't my father, I would have used all my strength to injure him. If I had reached the 5 Qis origin realm, he wouldn't be my match." Hearing Luo Fei Hong publicly call his father a good-for-nothing, everyone present, except for Chu Xiao, had a strange look on their faces. In fact, Luo Tianyang was indeed a bit of a good-for-nothing given his status and strength. Mo Tianlin asked curiously, "Why did Luo family head attack you?" "As far as I know, although Luo family head doesn't like you, he has never hit you." The conflict between Luo Fei Hung and the Luo family has been going on for a long time, but they haven't completely fallen out. In the past, even if Luo Fei Hung attacked the Luo family, she would only attack the younger generation. If the elders of the Luo family wanted to punish Luo Fei Hung, they would just put her in confinement. This was the first time that Luo Fei Hung was seriously injured. Luo Fei Hung said faintly, "Because I crippled Luo Fei Yun." Hearing this, everyone except for Chu Xiao raised their eyebrows. Luo Fei Yun was Luo Fei Hung's half-brother. He was also a person that the Luo family had been nurturing. However, according to what they knew, Luo Fei Yun was only in the physical invulnerability realm. He hadn't even stepped into the underworld. In the Luo family, he had always been suppressed by his younger sister. However, even if Luo Fei Yun was not as strong as Luo Fei Hung, he was still a direct descendant of the Luo family. He was the future heir of the Luo family and was being nurtured by the Luo family. But now, Luo Fei Hung said that she had crippled Luo Fei Yun. This was a shocking matter. The Luo family's old ancestor was so angry that he slapped her to death. Everyone felt that she had already restrained herself. Mo Tianlin said helplessly, "Why did you cripple Luo Feiyun? After all, he's the only heir of the Luo family. You've really caused quite a stir this time. Could Luo Feiyun be cured? I heard that West Chu's Jianghu divine doctor, angering Yama Feng Buping once cured a martial artist whose martial arts were crippled." Luo Feiheng pursed his lips and said, "That thing of his was blasted into meat paste by me. How can he be healed? Not to mention infuriating the King Yen Luo to death. Even a deity wouldn't be able to cure him." Hearing Luo Feiheng's words, everyone present suddenly felt that something was amiss. Mo Tianlin hurriedly said, "Wait! You said that you blasted Luo Feiyun into meat paste? When you said crippled, did you mean that you crippled his martial arts?" Luo Feiheng suddenly looked at Mo Tianlin's crotch and let out a strange laugh. "Of course you are the thing that you understand. Otherwise, what are you?" Hearing this, Mo Tianlin suddenly felt a chill in his crotch. Except for Chu Xiao, everyone else had a strange look on their faces. Even Mo Yezi, who was a knowledgeable old man, couldn't help but have a slight change in expression at this time. Only Chu Xiao looked calm. It wasn't because he knew Luo Feiheng, but because he knew that Luo Feiheng did the same in the original plot. However, that should be a matter of the future. This time, what was wrong with Luo Feiyun? He actually provoked Luo Feiheng again, and in the end, he still lost his penis. Speaking of which, Luo Feiyun was really unlucky. Whether it was in the original plot or now, he couldn't escape the fate of being crippled. Even if Chu Xiao's butterfly effect changed a lot of things, the results still couldn't change him. This brother was really sad. However, this also explained why Luo Tianyang was so angry. After all, Luo Feiyun was his son, the son he valued the most. In the end, he became a eunuch. Although Luo Tianyang had more than one son, and he wouldn't let his lineage end without descendants, a eunuch definitely couldn't be the head of the family. The heir that he had cultivated was really crippled. This was also the reason why Luo Tianyang was so angry that he directly injured Luo Feiheng. Chu Xiao shook his head and said, "Making people die without descendants, what kind of hatred do you have? I'm very curious. How did your brother provoke you this time? Why did you have to be so ruthless?" Chu Xiao understood Luo Feiheng. Although this woman looked abnormal, somewhat violent and overbearing, in fact, she wasn't a real lunatic. She had a sense of propriety. When the elders of the Luo family made things difficult for her, Luo Feiheng only beat up the children of the elders. She also had a sense of propriety. Most of the injuries were superficial and minor. There wasn't even a serious injury. Now, Luo Feiheng was so angry that she made her brother die without descendants. This was too ruthless. One could imagine what Luo Feiyun had done. Hearing this, Luo Feiheng sneered and said, "That trash is courting death, so don't blame me for being ruthless. Previously, when I entered the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, that idiot Luo Feiyun actually came to me and asked me to deliberately lose to him. Then, he would send the news to Wind Sweeping Tower so that he could enter the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard." Hearing this, Chu Xiao and the others were speechless. Was Luo Feiyun really an idiot? Or did he think that everyone in the pugilistic world was an idiot? Although the Longhu leaderboard could be manipulated under the table, it was only a slight change in the rankings. Strength and reputation were seen by everyone in the pugilistic world. How could it be falsified? Even if Luo Feiyun was the heir of the Luo family in Wu County, he was just a nobody in the pugilistic world. His strength was only at the physical invulnerability realm. Even if Luo Feiheng said that Luo Feiyun had defeated him, would Wind Sweeping Tower believe it? Would everyone in the pugilistic world believe it? This was simply a joke. In the eyes of Chu Xiao and the others, a person who could make such a request was also a joke. Chu Xiao frowned and said, "You crippled him just because of such a small matter? This is not in your character. You should know the consequences of doing so." Luo Feiyun was an idiot, but Luo Feiheng was not. She should know the consequences of doing so. Therefore, when it came to such matters, Luo Feiheng just had to ignore this idiot. Why bother to cripple someone? In the end, he was implicated. Luo Feiheng said indifferently, "If this idiot hadn't targeted me, why would I cripple him? I heard that he acted first and reported later. He secretly contacted the Shongshui family and wanted to marry me to them in exchange for the Ing family support for the Luo family. Of course, it was also to support him and ensure that he would become the head of the Luo family. I'm not a commodity. Since he wanted to sell me, then I crippled him. It's fair and reasonable, isn't it? Hearing this, Chu Xiao and the others shook their heads. Luo Feiyun was courting death. He couldn't blame others. Previously, they thought that it was the Luo family's decision to contact the Shongshui Ing family. If this was the case, Luo Feiheng might have resisted, but he wouldn't have done it so violently. After all, Luo Feiheng wasn't Chu Xiao. Luo Feiheng wouldn't do something like tricking his own father to death. But who would have thought that this matter was actually Luo Feiyun's own decision? Moreover, he acted first and reported later. After the matter was settled, he informed the Luo family so that they didn't even have the chance to regret it. Otherwise, they would have offended the Shongshui Ing family. Luo Feiyun dared to do such a thing. He was really courting death. Luo Feiheng had gotten off lightly by crippling him. Not killing him on the spot was already a sign of restraint. Then what are you going to do now? Chu Xiao asked. Luo Feiheng's handsome and beautiful face revealed a ferocious killing intent at this moment. Originally, the Luo family had raised me for a lifetime. At a critical moment, although I'm a woman, I don't mind helping the Luo family. But now, the Luo family has treated me, Luo Feiheng, as a commodity. Very well, I want to see who will regret it the most. Raising his head to look at Chu Xiao and the others, Luo Feiheng revealed a series of shocking plans. Of course, Chu Xiao wasn't surprised. Compared to what he had done to the Chu family, Luo Feiheng was already merciful enough. Raising his head, Luo Feiheng looked at Mo Yezi, Chu Xiao, and the others and said, Senior Mo, and the rest of you, if you help me, you will definitely offend the Luo family in the future. You might even offend the Ing family of Shongshui. I won't force you. Moreover, I have nothing now. Even if you believe me, I won't say empty words. Although I, Luo Feiheng, am a woman, I still know how to repay kindness. Today's matter will be repaid in the future. Mo Yezi smiled and shook his head. Little Luo, don't be so serious. Although I'm no longer the pavilion lord of the Divine Weapon Pavilion, I still have some connections. The Luo family won't dare to touch me, and the Ing family of Shongshui is the head of the 9 great clans. They won't cause trouble for me over such a small matter. In fact, little Luo, you don't need to be so ruthless. Just delay this matter for a while. Give me some time, I'll find some connections and put pressure on the Luo family. When the time comes, Luo Junyan will give in. A cold light flashed in Luo Feiheng's eyes as she said, No! Since the Luo family doesn't treat me as a disciple of the Luo family, but as a commodity that can be traded at any time, why should I stay in the Luo family? They were the ones who pushed this matter to the extreme first. Chu Xiao smiled and said, Don't look at me. You all know my ability to cause trouble. Not to mention the Luo family, I've even offended forces stronger than the Ing family of Shongshui. Now, it's not that much of a difference. Xie Xiao Lu also said, I've already made preparations before coming here. I rarely trouble my master, but as long as something happens, I believe my master will also help me bear it. Among these people, only Mo Tianlin didn't express his opinion. But in fact, among these people, Mo Tianlin was the first to know Luo Feiheng. Of course, this couldn't be blamed on Mo Tianlin for being a coward. Among these people, he was the one who had the most misgivings. Chapter 438. Mo Yezi was willing to help Luo Feiheng without any misgivings because he treated Luo Feiheng like a daughter. Ever since he forged the iris spear and gave it to Luo Feiheng, his attitude towards Luo Feiheng was even better than his own son. Moreover, Mo Yezi's situation was just as he said. With his status and connections, he wasn't afraid of the Luo clan or the Shongshui Ing clan. The same went for Xie Xiao Lu. The World Alliance was far away in West Chu, and with Chen Qingdi's dominance, why would he need to be afraid of others? As for Chu Xiao, Luo Feiheng could be considered a good friend and a member of the 9 halls. In terms of benefits, Luo Feiheng definitely wouldn't be an ordinary person in the future. It wasn't easy for her to establish the Bu Air Palace and stand tall in the world as a woman. If he helped her now, Chu Xiao wouldn't suffer in the future. Mo Tianlin had the most misgivings because the Mo clan wasn't strong and was only in eastern Qi. Moreover, his position as the successor of the Mo clan wasn't stable. There were many disciples in the Mo clan who weren't convinced by him and were always eyeing his position. Just when Mo Tianlin wanted to say something, Luo Feiheng spoke first. "All right, Mo Tianlin, I know your situation. Don't force yourself. Don't get involved in this matter." Hearing Luo Feiheng's words, Mo Tianlin raised his eyebrows and said, "What do you mean by force? I'm clearly very strong, okay? Don't talk about this matter anymore. I'm really going to get involved." Mo Tianlin wasn't a righteous person like Lu Fengxian, but he wasn't a cold-blooded person who would watch his friend get into trouble. In any case, Mo Tianlin had already thought it through. Even if the matter really got out of hand, as the most outstanding disciple of the Mo clan, he wouldn't be crippled or punished. At most, he would be scolded or punished to face the wall. He, Mo Tianlin, could bear it. As for other troubles, he could deal with it later. After Luo Feiheng thanked him, he didn't exchange any more pleasantries. At this moment, footsteps could be heard from outside. Luo Tianyang came in with some people and said, "All right, you've met him. The marriage contest is about to begin. Everyone, please go to the front." Luo Tianyang looked at Luo Feiheng with a complicated look in his eyes and said, "Feiheng, you go with him. Remember, don't cause trouble again. Otherwise, I won't be able to protect you if the old ancestor gets angry." As a father, it wouldn't be right to say that Luo Tianyang didn't have any feelings for Luo Feiheng. However, Luo Feiheng's position in Luo Tianyang's heart couldn't be compared to Luo Feiyun's. Luo Tianyang even wondered why Luo Feiheng didn't have such a powerful talent and not Luo Feiyun. Luo Tianyang's strength and talent weren't good enough, so he hoped that his son would become a dragon. Therefore, he used all his strength on Luo Feiyun. Unfortunately, Luo Feiyun wasn't good compared to the experts of the small sects or rogue cultivators. However, Luo Feiyun wasn't on the same level as the young geniuses of the big sections. Even so, Luo Tianyang still spoiled Luo Feiyun. Therefore, when Luo Feiheng crippled Luo Feiheng, Luo Tianyang lost his mind in anger and severely injured Luo Feiheng. However, he regretted it afterwards. When Luo Jionian and the other elders of the Luo clan were preparing to punish Luo Feiheng, Luo Tianyang spoke a few words to help him. Otherwise, Luo Feiheng wouldn't be sitting here leisurely eating sunflower seeds and reading romantic novels. Luo Feiheng walked out without saying a word. This surprised Luo Tianyang. The people of the Luo clan didn't allow Chu Xiao and the others to see Luo Feiheng because they were afraid that she would cause trouble with her character. However, because of Mo Yezi, the Luo clan let them in. Naturally, they didn't need to lock Luo Feiheng anymore. However, Luo Tianyang and the others were also prepared for Luo Feiheng to cause trouble. Who would have thought that Luo Feiheng would be so quiet this time? This made Luo Tianyang a little uncomfortable. Could it be that his daughter has already accepted her fate? Luo Tianyang chased after Luo Feiheng and tried to persuade her. "Daughter, it's not that I'm cruel, but you've gone too far this time. No matter what, Feiyun is still your brother. How could you do this to him?" Luo Feiheng glanced at him and said in an emotionless voice, "He wants to sell me to the Ying clan of Shang River. Isn't this too much?" Luo Tianyang frowned. How can a marriage between two clans be sold? Moreover, it's not like you don't know who Ying Bailu is. He's ranked 5th on the Longhu list and the successor of the Ying clan of Shang River. He's destined to become a giant in the future. Do you know how many women in the world want to marry Ying Bailu? Now that you have this opportunity, you don't cherish it. You don't know that even this opportunity was begged by the Luo clan. Luo Feiheng looked at Luo Tianyang coldly and said, "What if I say that I'll be stronger than Ying Bailu in the future?" Luo Tianyang smiled and didn't say anything. What kind of existence was a giant in the Jianghu? Only those who could create chaos in the Jianghu could be called a giant in the Jianghu. Even among the 9 great clans, there were only a few who could be called a giant in the Jianghu. The patriarch of the Luo clan didn't count, nor did the patriarch of the Mo clan. The patriarch of the Xiahou clan could barely be considered one, but the patriarch of the Ying clan of Shang River was a true giant in the Jianghu. Based on the talent and potential that Ying Bailu had displayed, he was stronger than the previous patriarchs of the Ying clan of Shang River. His future achievements were almost predictable. Now that Luo Feiheng said these words, even a man would be dreaming, let alone a woman. Chu Xiu didn't say anything because he knew how great Luo Feiheng's future achievements would be. For the Luo clan to give up on a giant in the Jianghu for the support of a giant in the Jianghu was enough to make the people of the Jianghu laugh about it for decades. Of course, for the Luo clan, they thought that they had made a wise decision. When they arrived at the courtyard of the Luo clan, there were already thousands of martial artists sitting in the courtyard. Some of them were martial artists from various forces, and some were young talents with some fame in the Jianghu. Of course, most of them were martial artists who came to watch the show. However, these people didn't even have a seat, so they could only watch the show from the edge of the courtyard or outside. When they saw Luo Feiheng come out, there was a commotion among these people. In fact, in all fairness, Luo Feiheng could be considered a stunning beauty in the Jianghu. If she were to change into a woman's clothes and dress up a little, she would look like a beautiful woman sitting there. She wouldn't be inferior to Yan Fian, who was one of the 4 great beauties of the Jianghu. It was a pity that once she opened her mouth, coupled with her personality, she would directly destroy the mood and lose a lot of points. For people like Mo Tianlin, he had known Luo Feiheng for a long time and didn't see her as a woman at all. Of course, in the eyes of those who didn't have much contact with Luo Feiheng, this young lady of the Luo clan was quite good. She had both looks and strength. She was really a good match for Ying Bailu of the Ying clan of Shangshui. After taking their seats, Luo Feiheng naturally sat with the people of the Luo clan, while Chu Xiu and the others sat below. Mo Tianlin looked around and said strangely, "The people of the Ying clan of Shangshui are not here yet?" Xie Xiao Lu said lightly, "Big shots are usually the last to appear. Wouldn't it be shameful to come first? Besides, this time, the Luo clan is in a hurry to unite with the Ying clan through marriage, and there's no definite news yet. Of course, the Ying clan won't be so proactive." However, at this time, the old ancestor of the Luo clan, Luo Zhonyan, suddenly went out to welcome some people. This made everyone feel a little strange. Which big shot is it this time? Although the Luo clan had declined, Luo Zhonyan was a genuine martial arts grandmaster. Those who could make him go out to welcome them in person were certainly not ordinary people. There were more than 10 people who were personally welcomed by Luo Zhonyan. Among them, the 2 leading people were very conspicuous. One of them was a handsome and masculine young man in a white luxurious robe. He wore a jade crown on his head and held a folding fan in his hand. Beside him was an old eunuch in a purple robe. The old eunuch's cultivation base was at the unity of heaven and man level. Chu Xiu asked Mo Tianlin, "Who are they?" "Are they from the Eastern Qi imperial family?" Mo Tianlin said in a low voice. "They are people from the Eastern Qi Crown Prince LV Longji. That young man is Li Yuan, the only son of the Eastern Qi's Lin Duke Li Rang. The Lin Duke has always supported the Crown Prince, so Li Yuan has been with the Crown Prince since he was a child. He can be considered as the Crown Prince's confidant. And that old eunuch is LV Longji's personal eunuch, Chen Do. He is also his confidant. LV Longji is giving face to the Luo clan by sending 2 of his confidants here." Hearing Mo Tianlin's introduction of the 2 people, Chu Xiu's eyes showed a hint of surprise. Between the 2 people, Chu Xiu had never heard of the old eunuch, but Li Yuan would become a big shot in the Eastern Qi imperial court in the future. He was the heavenly king Li Yuan. This person used to be the northern general of Eastern Qi, and later was conferred the title of Northern King. His status was even higher than his father's. In the later years, when the Eastern Qi's national power declined and was counterattacked by the Northern Yan, it was Li Yuan who presided over the northern lands of Eastern Qi and resisted the Northern Yan. He was definitely one of the top officials in Eastern Qi. But that was more than 20 years later. At this time, Li Yuan was only LV Longji's confidant. He had an idle position in the Eastern Qi imperial court. It was just an ordinary small official, so it seemed very ordinary. Moreover, the background of Li Yuan's rise was also very interesting. He was originally a member of the imperial court, but when he was traveling in Jianghu, he was suddenly chosen by an eminent monk from the western regions. The monk insisted that he was his destined successor, and before he died, he passed his cultivation to Li Yuan, causing Li Yuan to soar. From a seemingly inconspicuous noble of Eastern Qi, he later became an important minister of Eastern Qi, the Northern King, and the great general. Chapter 439. Heavenly King Li Yuan, whose name would shake the world after more than 20 years, seemed very ordinary at this time. However, his strength was not weak at this time. He also had the cultivation of 5 cheese collecting in origin. But he was slightly older, looking like he was in his 30s. His father, Duke Lin, was a hereditary duke. In fact, in his generation, the family had actually declined. Li Yuan's ancestors were martial arts grandmasters, but his father had only cultivated to the oneness of heaven and man's state at this age. Li Yuan, on the other hand, had already shown good talent at a young age. However, even if Duke Lin's mansion tried their best, they could not let Li Yuan stand shoulder to shoulder with the outstanding talents on the Longhu list. The so-called Duke's public house sounded very famous, but in reality, after declining for so long, its foundation was not even comparable to a small faction. Therefore, the Duke of Lingua allowed Li Yuan to join the Crown Prince, LV Longji, and was prepared to use the merit of helping the Duke of Lingua's public house regain its glory. Mo Tianlin did not know that Chu Xiu was thinking so much at this moment. He just sneered and said, "The Luo family is really desperate. What do they mean by inviting people from the imperial court? Is the Luo family going to rely on the imperial court, or what? Don't they know that this is a taboo in Jianghu?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "The boundary between Jianghu and the imperial court is not so clear. As long as there are benefits, why can't they join forces? Don't forget that Northern Yan had to join forces with Northern Yan Jianghu to defeat Eastern Qi. Besides, now the Eastern Qi Imperial Court also knows the benefits of joining forces with people from Jianghu. White Tiger Hall, one of the 4 spirits, has now joined forces with Eastern Qi Imperial Court. Don't you know?" Mo Tianlin nodded. Of course he knew this, but as a man of Jianghu, he still had some rejection of the Imperial Court. The Luo family was only holding a martial arts competition to find a spouse. Coupled with the Luo family's current strength, Crown Prince LV Longji naturally did not have to come in person. However, he had sent his trusted aide and personal eunuchs. This was already enough. At this time, Luo Tianyang personally led Li Yuan and Chen Do to the seats of honor. Li Yuan smiled and said, "The Luo family's patriarch's daughter is famous. This martial contest for a spouse has attracted many young talents. Speaking of which, I don't seem to be very old. I wonder if I can participate?" Hearing this, Luo Tianyang revealed an awkward expression. If LV Longji said this, Luo Tianyang would definitely agree. Who cares about the imperial court or the pugilistic world? Being able to become the crown prince's wife was something that the Luo family could not ask for more. However, the problem was that these words were spoken by Li Yuan. He was only a trusted aide of the crown prince, and his position was incomparable. Moreover, the Duke of Lin's public house had already declined. Although it had the title of a duke, it could only be ranked in the middle among all the dukes and marquises in Eastern Qi. When Li Yuan saw Luo Tianyang's expression, he knew what he was thinking. This caused Li Yuan to sneer inwardly, but he said indifferently, "Patriarch Luo, please don't mind me. I was just joking." Hearing this, Luo Tianyang also laughed and chatted with them for a while before leaving. In fact, from this point, it could be seen that Luo Tianyang was indeed not very good as a patriarch, whether it was in terms of strength or ability. Just now, when Li Yuan said that, regardless of whether he was joking or not, Luo Tianyang just had to pretend to flatter him and fool him, and it would be over. In the end, Luo Tianyang acted as if he looked down on Li Yuan, but because of the latter's status, he could not say much. This completely offended Li Yuan. After Luo Tianyang left, Li Yuan's expression was already somewhat gloomy. Chen Do, who was beside him, smiled and said in a slightly sharp voice, "Why? You feel uncomfortable being looked down upon?" Li Yuan sneered and said, "No wonder the Luo family has declined to such a state. With such an idiotic patriarch, how can the Luo family have a good future?" Chen Do waved his hand and said, "Young man, don't be so hot-tempered. An expert once said that as the saying goes, the river flows east for 30 years and then west for 30 years. Don't bully the young for being poor. Now that you are with His Highness the Crown Prince, your future is boundless. Don't think that Luo Tianyang looks down on your status now. Who knows, he might have to bow to you in the future. When the Crown Prince ascends to the throne, he will directly assign you to the military. At the very least, you will be a general or a general. At that time, it will just be a mere Luo family. Not to mention Luo Tianyang. You probably won't even have to worry about the Luo family's patriarch. When Li Yuan heard this, he cupped his hands towards Chen Do and said, "Thank you for your guidance, Eunuch Chen." "Don't worry, Eunuch Chen. Since I've already joined His Highness the Crown Prince, then I will naturally go through fire and water for His Highness the Crown Prince. Only when His Highness the Crown Prince ascends to the throne in the future will there be a day for us to make a name for ourselves." Hearing Li Yuan's words, Chen Do nodded in satisfaction. Li Yuan was one of the more promising young confidants that His Highness the Crown Prince had recruited. Although his current strength could not be compared to the young talents on the Longhu list, Li Yuan was bold and meticulous in his work. He was reliable, so he had gained His Highness the Crown Prince's favor. Just then, Chen Do inadvertently looked in Chu Xiu's direction and let out a soft cry of surprise. Li Yuan asked in surprise, "Eunuch Chen, what's wrong?" Chen Do laughed coldly and said, "Nothing much. I just met a fellow that His Highness the Crown Prince often talks about. That fellow has caused His Highness the Crown Prince a lot of trouble." Li Yuan asked doubtfully, "Who is it that actually dares to go against His Highness the Crown Prince?" Chen Do pointed at Chu Xiu and said, "It's that fellow, ranked 6th on the Longhu list, Chu Xiu from the Guanzhong torture room. Originally, His Highness the Crown Prince and Prince Anil Zhongwen Yuan were working well together. It was this fellow who leaked the news to the second prince, who then reported the matter to His Majesty. Not only did it lead to the destruction of the Prince Anil residence, but His Majesty also gave His Highness a good scolding, causing His Highness's prestige to plummet." Li Yuan asked doubtfully, "This fellow has gone overboard. Did His Highness the Crown Prince not take any action?" Chen Do snorted coldly and said, "The previous incident at the Prince Anil residence caused His Highness the Crown Prince to lose a lot of points in His Majesty's eyes. Of course he wouldn't dare to do anything. Moreover, this Chu Xiu is from the Guanzhong torture room. This is a little tricky. You also know that the Guanzhong torture room is not considered a power of our Eastern Qi, but in certain areas, they have worked with our Eastern Qi quite a bit. Moreover, this Chu Xiu is also one of the higher-ups of the Guanzhong torture room. If His Highness makes a move against him in Eastern Qi and His Majesty finds out, he will definitely be heavily punished. A lack of forbearance in small matters will spoil great plans. This kind of insignificant person can be taught a lesson at any time. There is no need to rush. Moreover, with His Highness's magnanimity, who knows? He might forget about this matter after some time." Li Yuan looked at Chu Xiu and narrowed his eyes, saying, "Don't worry, Eunuch Chen. If there is a chance, I will help His Highness vent his anger." At this moment, Chu Xiu also felt that someone was looking at him. He turned his head and just happened to meet Li Yuanli's gaze. He could feel the meaning behind that gaze. Unexpectedly, neither of them was willing to give in to the other. In terms of aura, Li Yuanli was actually able to stand shoulder to shoulder with Chu Xiu, not cowering in the slightest. Sensing the malice in Li Yuan's gaze, Chu Xiu could guess the other party's reason. After all, in the previous incident with Qiu Zhenxing at the Pegasus farm, he had stood on the second prince's side and caused the crown prince a lot of trouble. Now it would be strange if the crown prince, LV Longji's people, still treated him well. However, this Li Yuan did indeed have the potential to become a big shot in the future. At the very least, he dared to compete with Chu Xiu in terms of aura and was not at a disadvantage at all. In fact, although Li Yuan was the crown prince's man, his strength and status were not as good as Chu Xiu's. Stepping into the Five Qis gathering in the Origin Realm at the age of 30 was considered outstanding among the warriors of the same level. But looking at the top 10 of the Longhu list, there were almost no more than 30 people who had reached this realm. In terms of reputation in Jianghu, Chu Xiu was also more famous than him. At this time, Chu Xiu was the torture officer of the Guanzhong torture room, while Li Yuan was only a low-ranking official in the Eastern Qi imperial court. If not for his identity as the crown prince, LV Longji's confidant, he was not even worth mentioning. Under the premise that he was inferior to Chu Xiu in all aspects, he was still able to make his aura not lose to Chu Xiu's, which was quite rare. After the two sides looked at each other, they withdrew their gazes. At this moment, the great ancestor of the Luo family and Luo Tianyang both went out to welcome them. To be able to put on such a show, it was naturally the Shongshuang family, the head of the 9 major families. Everyone looked at the gate. Luo Tianyang and the great ancestor of the Luo family led the way. From outside, 3 people walked in, but everyone present subconsciously looked at the person in the middle. The person in the middle was an extremely handsome young man. The proportions of his facial features seemed to be carved out of jade, perfect and flawless. Even the faint smile that always hung on his face had never changed. There was not even the slightest fluctuation in it. He was wearing a long black robe with white cloud patterns embroidered on it. As he walked, the white cloud patterns actually reacted with the surrounding power of heaven and earth, rippling like water. It was extremely miraculous. Clearly, his robe was not an ordinary item. This person was the unparalleled young master Ing Bailu, who was famous in Jianghu. He was proficient in astrology, military strategy, and secret martial arts. There were many people in Jianghu who were proficient in these things, and there were also many who could surpass Ing Bailu in a certain aspect. However, no one could be proficient in so many things at the same time. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was unparalleled in the world. Behind Ing Bailu was a young man who looked slightly younger than Ing Bailu. Although he was also handsome, he was not as handsome as Ing Bailu. Moreover, there was a layer of gloominess on his face, which formed a sharp contrast with Ing Bailu, who always wore a smile. Behind the two of them was an old man who deliberately took a step back from them. His subconscious hunch made it obvious that this old man was most likely a servant. However, the problem was that this old man who looked like a servant exuded an extremely powerful aura that was not inferior to Luo Jianyan's. This old man was a martial Dao grandmaster. Chapter 440. With Shongshui Ing clan's strength, they definitely had no lack of martial Dao grandmasters. They even had true fire spirit refinement realm experts. But what was really strange was that someone actually used a martial Dao grandmaster as a servant. This was no longer shocking, it was horrifying. The strong had the dignity of the strong. No matter how weak a martial Dao grandmaster was, he was still a martial Dao grandmaster. No one could understand why a martial Dao grandmaster would be willing to be a servant, and why the Shongshui Ing clan dared to use him. But at this moment, everyone could see that the Luo clan's old ancestor was obviously embarrassed. Although the 9 great clans were on the same level in the pugilistic world, the gap between them was huge. Someone like the Luo clan's old ancestor could only be a servant in Shongshui Ing clan. How embarrassing was that? Ing Bailu seemed to have noticed Luo Jianyan's embarrassment. He smiled and said, "Senior Luo, we're all from the 9 great clans. There's no need to be so polite. Just do what you have to do." Luo Jianyan hurriedly said, "In that case, young Master Ing, please take a seat. The joust for a spouse will begin now. Young Master Ing, you're strong enough to be the ring master." The Luo clan's so-called joust for a spouse was actually just a show. Under normal circumstances, the Luo clan would either let their daughter be the ring master, and whoever could defeat Luo Feiheng would marry that person. But considering Luo Feiheng's strength and her current state, they decided to forget about it. Not to mention that there were not many men in the pugilistic world who could defeat Luo Feiheng. Even if there were, with Luo Feiheng's current state, Luo Feiheng would definitely kill the person in the ring. At that time, forget about the joust for a spouse, it would directly turn into a murder case. Therefore, the Luo clan's strategy was to let the participants of the joust for a spouse compete in the ring and choose the ring master. The final winner would then be able to marry Luo Feiheng. Of course, now that Ing Bailu was here, this joust for a spouse was just for show. Otherwise, who could possibly defeat Ing Bailu? But right at this moment, Ing Bailu suddenly said, "I won't be ascending the arena this time. Even though my younger brother, Ing Baihu, rarely steps foot into the world, his strength is sufficient for him to ascend the arena and compete with these young geniuses of the world." As soon as Ing Bailu's words left his mouth, everyone present was stunned. Practically everyone in the pugilistic world knew that the Luo clan's goal this time was to form a marriage alliance with Ing Bailu of the Ing clan. Yet now, it was Ing Bailu's younger brother, Ing Baihu. What was going on? The disciples of the Ing clan were naturally not trash, and Ing Baihu was the younger brother of Ing Bailu. His identity was even more extraordinary. However, no matter how extraordinary he was, he could not defeat Bailu. This situation left the Luo family members unable to react. Luo Jianyan asked in confusion, "Young Master Ing, what do you mean by this? Don't tell me you're not going to personally enter the arena?" Ing Bailu countered with a question of his own. "Who said that I'm going to fight in person?" Previously, It was your Luo clan that wanted to form a marriage alliance with my Ying clan. But did you say that it was necessary? What? Could it be that you think that my younger brother is not worthy of your Luo clan, and are looking down on the disciples of my Ying clan? Luo Jianyan was immediately stumped by these words. He didn't know what to say. Could he publicly say that he looked down on Ying Baihu? Wouldn't that be the same as offending the entire Ying clan? But the crux of the problem was that Luo Feiheng's marriage to Ying Bailu and Ying Baihu were two completely different concepts. One was ranked 5th on the Longhu leaderboard, the future successor of the Ying clan, while the other was just an ordinary disciple of the Ying clan. The gap between them was too big. Below the arena, Xie Xiaolu shook his head and said, "The Luo clan is too clever for their own good." In the end, they were tricked by the Ying clan. Chu Xiao also sneered and said, "There's no such thing as taking advantage of others in this pugilistic world. The Luo clan wanted to use a daughter to gain the support and help of the Ying clan. What else can the Ying clan get other than Luo Feiheng? A half-dead Luo clan? Using Ying Baihu to form a marriage alliance with the Luo clan, using an unimportant disciple to become the in-laws of the Luo clan, and even gaining a disciple who had once entered the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard, Luo Feiheng. The Ying clan of Shongshui really didn't lose out on this deal. By the way, do you know anything about that Ying Baihu? How strong is he? How does he compare to Ying Bailu?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "With Ying Bailu in the Ying clan, do you think the other disciples of the Ying clan can stand out? Although Ying Baihu wasn't a nameless figure in the Ying clan of Shang River City, at the very least, he was overshadowed by Ying Bailu. Look at his gloomy expression right now. Clearly, he had a lot of opinions about his elder brother. Also, do you know how Ying Baihu got his name? Ying Bailu was called Bailu because of the auspicious omen of a white deer. However, Ying Baihu was called Ying Baihu not because a white tiger appeared when he was born, but purely because his brother was called Bailu, so he was called Baihu. For someone whose name even came into existence because of his elder brother, it would be strange if he didn't feel a bit of resentment. By the way, now that Ying Baihu is fighting, what should we do about our plan?" Chu Xiao narrowed his eyes and said, "Of course we'll go according to plan. Since Luo Feiheng is confident, we'll just cooperate with her. Regardless of whether it's Ying Baihu or Ying Baihu, there's only one thing we need to do, and that's to stall for time." Mo Tianlin nodded, then suddenly said, "This time, Ying Baihu didn't go up himself, but let his younger brother go up instead. I feel that it's not only because the Ying clan wants to cheat the Luo clan, but also because Ying Baihu himself doesn't want to marry Feihong. I once heard that Ying Baihu is interested in the cloud sword fairy Yan Fian who came to the Yunu Palace, but everyone knows the rules of the Yunu Palace, so Yan Fian can only politely decline Ying Baihu's confession, but Ying Baihu is still infatuated with her. But this is just a rumor, especially those women, so I don't know if it's true or not." Xie Xiaolu couldn't help but say, "I say, Mo Tianlin, you still have the mood to study these rumors?" Mo Tianlin retorted, "What do you mean by rumors? Know yourself, know your opponent, and you'll never be defeated. If we're going to fight Ying Baihu later, we'll have a better chance of winning if we know more, right?" Xie Xiaolu curled his lips. He didn't think that these rumors would be of any help. While Xie Xiaolu was bickering with Mo Tianlin, Luo Jianyan had already made his decision. He forced a smile and said, "Since young Master Ying has said so, then the joust for a spouse will begin." For the entire Luo family, the first problem was who they should marry, not who they should marry. From Ying Baihu to Ying Baihu, although the difference was huge, for the Luo clan, it was still a marriage alliance with the Ying clan, and the other party was a direct descendant of the Ying clan. The Luo clan couldn't say that they wouldn't get any benefits, so Luo Jianyan could only nod and agree. After Luo Jianyan left, Ying Baihu turned to Ying Baihu and said, "Are you satisfied with the marriage I've arranged for you? Although the Wu region Luo clan is disappointing, Luo Feiheng is really not bad. It's a pity that the Luo clan was blind, buying the casket and returning the pearls. But it just so happens that I'll give this pearl to you. It's worthy of your status and the glory of the Ying clan." A cold smile appeared on Ying Baihu's face, causing his originally gloomy expression to darken even further. "Ever since I was young, the clan has always prioritized you. Whatever you don't want, they give it to me. Yet, you still have to pretend to be a good elder brother. Is there any meaning to it? I can see that the Luo clan looks down on me. You were the one they wanted to marry before, but you didn't want it, so they gave it to me. Even the marriage is like this. If you're really a good brother, why didn't you give Luo Fei Hung to me? Why didn't you give Yan Fian to me as well? Slap! A loud slap rang out, but Ying Baihu didn't even move. Perhaps only the old servant from the Shongshui clan could see Ying Baihu's movements, but he acted as if he didn't see anything. Ying Baihu covered his face, his eyes filled with hatred as he looked at Ying Baihu, but he didn't dare to say another word. Ying Baihu still had that unchanging smile on his face, and said in a gentle tone, "The things I've given you since you were young weren't charity, they were gifts because you're my younger brother. But it's also because you're my younger brother that you should know that there are some things you shouldn't think about, and can't think about. Otherwise, as your older brother, I'll get angry. This slap is a lesson. Remember not to anger me in the future. I've already reported the marriage with the Luo clan to my father, and he's agreed. Now that the arena is in front of you, it's up to you whether you want to go or not." Ying Baihu covered his face and said coldly, "Go. Why not? Sooner or later, you'll regret it." He wasn't Ying Baihu, who had the right to choose any woman he liked. He didn't even need to consider marriage, and it was all up to his mood. Even if Ying Baihu wanted to marry an ordinary person, the Ying clan wouldn't interfere. But Ying Baihu was different. Since he couldn't obtain the Ying clan's power, he could borrow some of the Luo clan's power after marrying Luo Fei Hung. Ying Baihu didn't care about these things, but he, Ying Baihu, would use these powers to take back what belonged to him sooner or later. Using his inner force to erase the palm print on his face, Ying Baihu took a step forward and stepped onto the arena. His 5-cheese unification stage strength was on full display, and it immediately shocked everyone present. Ying Baihu didn't look very old, but he had also reached the 5-cheese unification stage. Right now, Ying Baihu hadn't officially roamed the pugilistic world, but as long as his attainments in martial Dao were half as good as his older brothers, he wouldn't be able to escape the top 10 of the Longhu leaderboard. Having 2 people on the Longhu leaderboard was a terrifying achievement. Chapter 441. When Ying Baihu walked up to the stage, it truly gave everyone a fright. No one had expected that this unknown disciple of the Ying family would possess such strength. Was the strength of the Ying family of Shongshui really that terrifying? Could any random disciple of the Ying family be this powerful? At this moment, on Ying Bailu's side, the old servant who had been silent all this while sighed softly and said, "Eldest young master, second young master is still young. Moreover, he was strictly disciplined by the patriarch when he was young, so his way of thinking is a little extreme." Ying Bailu's expression didn't change in the slightest as he looked at the arena. He said in a gentle voice, "Uncle Fu, I know that. Otherwise, do you think I would give him so many things and give him the opportunity to unite with the Luo clan through marriage? The Ying family has never been strong because of one person, but because of a group of people. Unfortunately, Baihu doesn't know this. But it doesn't matter. Let him hate me. As long as he doesn't cross my bottom line, this hatred can be used as motivation to make him stronger. If he becomes stronger, it means that Shongshui Ying clan has become stronger as well. So why not?" Uncle Fu nodded. "If only the second young master could think like you, then the Ying family will be even more glorious." Ying Baihu was far more broad-minded than Uncle Fu had imagined. Of course, this was also the confidence brought by absolute strength. So what if Ying Baihu hated him? So what if he was jealous of him? Anyway, his younger brother couldn't catch up to him in this life, and he wouldn't be able to catch up to him in the next. He was no threat to him. The infighting and quarrels between brothers in the other clans were all because of the gap between the two sides. One wanted to replace the other, while the other was afraid of being replaced. That was why there was infighting. But the Ying family was different. Was Ying Baihu afraid of being replaced? He was the unparalleled young master peerless. No one in the Ying family could replace him. It was precisely because of this confidence that Ying Bailu allowed Ying Baihu to resent him. In his opinion, Ying Baihu's actions were just like a child throwing a tantrum when he couldn't get his beloved toy. It wasn't a big deal. Of course, if Ying Baihu were to provoke his bottom line again and again, just like what he said just now, then Ying Bailu would have to teach him a lesson so that he would have a good memory. At this moment, on the stage, Ying Baihu's aura was released to the extreme, looking down on everyone. If he did not have the halo of defeating Bailu, he would not be easy to deal with. Perhaps he would have already stepped into Jianghu and made a name for himself in the martial world. He might not be able to beat his own brother Bai Lu, but could it be that he couldn't beat the rest of the trash present? Who's going up the stage? Ying Baihu coldly shouted as he stared at the crowd below. Everyone present exchanged glances. Actually, anyone could tell that this joust for a spouse was just a show. Since they knew that Ying Bailu was coming, none of them had made any preparations to enter the ring. Now that it was Ying Baihu's turn to go on stage, everyone present was a little eager, but still, no one dared to be the first to go on stage. Although Ying Baihu was inferior to Ying Bailu, and judging from his aura, he should have just stepped into the 5-cheese origin stage not long ago. The problem was that there were only a few people present who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Ying Baihu. Moreover, no one knew exactly how strong Ying Baihu was, so no one dared to be the first to test him. Seeing that no one was going up the stage, Ying Baihu frowned. His brother, Ying Bailu, had long made a name for himself in Jianghu. It was about time for him to make a name for himself in Jianghu. Ordinary martial artists began to wander Jianghu when they were around the innate stage. Some of the disciples of the major sects almost always reached the inner invulnerability or physical invulnerability. For example, Shen Bai only appeared in Jianghu when he cultivated to the 3 flowers at one's prominent stage, which was considered very late. As for Ying Baihu, he only stepped into Jianghu when he broke through the 5-cheese origin stage. He wanted to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat and not let the glory of Ying Bailu overshadow him again. Now that it was time to make a move, it was a little awkward that no one went up the stage. Mo Tianlin looked over at Luo Fei Hung. At this time, Luo Fei Hung had her eyes closed, looking as if she was thinking about something. It was extremely inconsistent with her usual personality. Mo Tianlin said in a low voice, "Fei Hung is not ready yet. Brother Chu, you deal with this guy first. Ying Bailu won't go up the stage, so it should be very easy to deal with this guy." Chu Xiu nodded. Just as he was about to get up, he saw Xie Xiaolu blocking in front of him and said, "Brother Chu, you don't have to deal with this kind of person. What if Ying Bailu goes up the stage later, or if someone stronger comes? I'll do it." Xie Xiaolu was still in the 3 flowers at one's prominent stage. Chu Xiu subconsciously wanted to stop him, but at this moment, he suddenly thought of something. He glanced at Xie Xiaolu with the heaven's sun gazing at air and asked in surprise, "You're about to take that step?" Xie Xiaolu smiled and said, "Although I'm not as early as you, Brother Chu, I've been in the 3 flowers at one's prominent stage for a long time. It's about time for me to make a breakthrough. I can use this opportunity to hone myself." On the side, Mo Tianlin couldn't help but twitch his mouth when he heard this. He was good friends with Xie Xiaolu. Now that Xie Xiaolu was about to step into the 5-cheese origin stage, he naturally wouldn't be jealous. However, he still felt a little jealous. Anyway, he was still a little far from this stage. He hadn't even touched the threshold. As Xie Xiaolu went up the stage, Luo Jianyan and Luo Tianyang's faces darkened. They knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble. They all knew the relationship between Xie Xiaolu and Luo Fei Hung. Because of this, they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others would not marry Luo Fei Hung. But now, they still wanted to go up the stage. If this wasn't causing trouble, then what was? However, even if they knew that Xie Xiaolu and the others were here to cause trouble, it was useless. The stage was right there. Could the Luo family stop people from going up? Ying Bailu looked at Xie Xiaolu and asked, "Who is this person?" Uncle Fu said softly, "He is Xie Xiaolu, the disciple of Chen Qingdi from the World Alliance. He is ranked 14th on the Longhu leaderboard." At this moment, Ying Bailu really didn't know who Xie Xiaolu was. It wasn't because he was arrogant, but because Ying Bailu had been famous for a long time. Moreover, it had been a long time since Ying Bailu appeared in the Jianghu. At that time, Xie Xiaolu was ranked outside the top 20. Naturally, Ying Bailu had never heard of his name. Ying Bailu nodded and said, "So you're Emperor Chen Qing's disciple. The World Alliance's Emperor Chen Qing is quite a character. My father once said that there are countless cultivators in the world who are born in the wilderness, but those who can achieve what Emperor Chen Qing has done are as rare as phoenix feathers and qilin horns. Since this Xie Xiaolu is a disciple of Chen Qingdi, he should not be weak. It's just that his realm is lower than white tigers. Don't worry about this round." There were countless examples of a 3-flower realm cultivator defeating a 5-cheese origin realm cultivator in the Jianghu, but it also depended on who the opponent was. The disciples of the Xiangshui family had always defeated those stronger than them. It would be shameful if they were challenged by someone who was a higher realm than them. At this time, Ying Baihu saw Xie Xiaolu come onto the stage. He immediately snorted coldly, and the gang qi around his body suddenly exploded. He threw a punch, and the ink-colored gang qi rose with the wind, lingering around his body, and turned into a dragon's roar as it smashed towards Xie Xiaolu's head. Ying Baihu was prepared to make a name for himself in the Jianghu this time. For him, it didn't matter who his opponent was. What he needed to do was to defeat any opponent that appeared in front of him, and then marry Luo Fei Heng. Step by step, he would take back what was rightfully his. Xie Xiaolu frowned. The people of the Xiangshui family were indeed not simple. Even if this Ying Baihu was just a nobody in the Jianghu, the power of his attack was far beyond that of an ordinary 5-Chi's origin realm cultivator. The floating feather blade on Xie Xiaolu's back was unsheathed. The blade's edge was extremely cold, and the incomparably sharp blade momentum tore through the gang qi. It seemed light, but its power was not weak either. In an instant, the long blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand slashed out countless astral blades. His blade momentum was incomparably fast. His speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, the sky-covering astral blades had already surrounded Ying Baihu. But right at this moment, a violent dragon roar rang out from Ying Baihu's body. Countless pitch-black astral energy coiled around him, transforming into the shape of a dragon. Like a soaring dragon, it roared through the heavens and earth. A series of loud sounds rang out as the countless astral saber beams shattered. Under such a powerful force, Xie Xiaolu's figure could not help but retreat. However, at this time, Ying Baihu formed a seal with both hands. As the seal descended, the gang qi condensed into the shape of a dragon. The powerful momentum seemed to be able to crush the heavens and earth, and its power increased by 30%. Everyone present had heard of this move before. It was a secret skill of the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Record of the Xiangshui family, the Coiling Dragon Seal. It was said that the power of this seal could shatter the heavens and split the earth, and it was extremely powerful. Xie Xiaolu gritted his teeth. This guy's strength was a bit too excessive. At this moment, he was already half a step into the 5-Chi's origin realm, but in terms of power, he was still suppressed to the extreme by Ying Baihu. After retreating, the floating feather blade in Xie Xiaolu's hand blossomed with a deep cold light. As the blade slashed down, the blade light seemed to condense into the shape of a phoenix's feather. It seemed to be falling gently and slowly, but its speed was extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had already arrived in front of Ying Baihu. At this moment, Ying Baihu stretched out a hand, and powerful astral energy condensed in his hand. A black dragon claw grabbed Xie Xiaolu's saber, and a loud bang resounded. The saber energy and saber astral energy were destroyed by Ying Baihu's claw. Even the floating feather saber in Xie Xiaolu's hand couldn't endure the powerful force and was blasted away. Just when everyone thought that Xie Xiaolu was easily defeated by Ying Baihu, Xie Xiaolu did not retreat. Instead, he advanced. He condensed the gang qi around his body into a fist. It was such a simple fist, but the fist intent was extremely powerful. Under this fist, either the world's rivers and mountains will fall into my hands, or 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers will be destroyed by my fist. The fist intent of this punch was extremely tyrannical and terrifying. Ying Baihu didn't seem to be affected by this punch, but Xie Xiaolu's perlicue was already bleeding. Because this was not the fist intent that Xie Xiaolu could currently grasp, but the fist intent that belonged to his master, Chen Qingdi. 1,000 miles of mountains and rivers like a painting. Fist-shattering mountains and river suppression. Chapter 442. Chen Qingdi's name shook the Jianghu, but no one knew what kind of cultivation technique he practiced. Because Chen Qingdi was born in the wilderness, the cultivation techniques he practiced were too varied. But now, it was no longer important what kind of cultivation technique Chen Qingdi practiced. The people of the Jianghu only knew that Chen Qingdi's fist was very strong. It was a fist intent that could suppress mountains and rivers, shatter mountains and break rivers. This kind of powerful fist intent was condensed by Chen Qingdi after experiencing countless battles and tribulations. It was a fist intent that belonged to him alone, so Xie Xiaolu could not completely inherit it. Because of this, as a disciple of Chen Qingdi, Xie Xiaolu used a saber, not a fist technique. But although Xie Xiaolu used a saber, it did not mean that he did not know Chen Qingdi's fist. It was just that although Chen Qingdi had shown him this fist intent, with Xie Xiaolu's experience and understanding of the martial Dao, he was unable to fully display this fist intent. Even if he forced himself to display it, he would not be able to injure others, but he would still be injured, and the backlash would not be small. But at this time, the complexion of his opponent, Ying Baihu, had already changed. Xie Xiaolu's fist blasted out. The powerful fist intent stirred up all the astral energy in his body, and even the surrounding world's origin qi retreated. This was the first time Ying Baihu felt a threat from Xie Xiaolu, an extremely powerful threat. Along with this pressure, Ying Baihu roared, and the astral energy around his body faintly condensed into the shape of a dragon, roaring to the heavens and the earth, turning into a black dragon that attached itself to his body. At this moment, behind Ying Baihu, there seemed to be a figure of a dragon and a human figure intertwined, and as he blasted out his fist, it suppressed the mountains and rivers of the myriad worlds. Whether it was Chen Qingdi's fist intent or Ying Baihu's fist, both were fierce and overbearing to the extreme. When the two fists collided, an incomparably powerful might burst out, shaking the entire arena to the point of cracking. At this moment, everyone's expressions changed slightly. Ying Baihu's strength had exceeded their expectations. Even Xie Xiaolu's strength had reached such a level. This was even more unexpected. Below, Mo Tianlin looked at the commotion on the field and felt a bit upset. He was not jealous of Xie Xiaolu, but he was blaming himself for not living up to expectations. In the past, when he met Xie Xiaolu, the difference in strength between them wasn't that big. Xie Xiaolu was a bit stronger than him, but there was a limit to how much stronger he was. Later, Mo Tianlin also met Luo Feihong. However, in his opinion, a woman like Luo Feihong who was stronger than a man was simply abnormal. There was no way he could compare himself with her. He did not want to compare himself with Luo Feihong. Later on, he got to know Chu Xiu, who was even more abnormal than Luo Feihong. He was an existence that could compete with the top 5 geniuses on the Dragon and Tiger list. Comparing himself to Chu Xiu was simply asking for trouble. But now, Mo Tianlin discovered that even Xie Xiaolu, whom he had always thought to be on par with him, had already surpassed him. At least, he didn't even have the courage to resist Xie Xiaolu's fist. This made Mo Tianlin somewhat depressed. Chu Xiu looked at Mo Tianlin's appearance and couldn't help but shake his head. "Brother Mo, your personality is like this. You like to enjoy life. In fact, you don't need to deliberately compare yourself with others. Just be yourself. Otherwise, if you force yourself to cultivate, not only will it not bring you any benefits, it will also lead to a bottleneck in your heart." Regarding Mo Tianlin's personality, Chu Xiu could be considered to be quite familiar. Mo Tianlin really wasn't the kind of person who was suited to fight in the wind and rain of Jianghu. Just look at the things that Mo Tianlin liked to do. He liked to enjoy wine, he liked to write poems and songs. The only things that he didn't like were cultivation and martial arts. Moreover, Mo Tianlin's strength was actually very ordinary. The reason why he was able to step into the Dragon and Tiger list was because he was dumped by a woman. Because of this, he started to cultivate crazily in a moment of anger, which resulted in his current strength. Therefore, it could be said that Mo Tianlin was a person with talent. The only thing that he lacked was a heart that specialized in martial arts. Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Mo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, "Brother Chu is right, I'm a bit too stubborn. However, I really need to cultivate harder during this period of time. Otherwise, not only will I be completely left behind by you, I reckon that I won't even be able to keep my position in the Mo clan." Currently, Mo Tianlin was the successor of the Mo clan. In fact, Mo Tianlin didn't really care much about this so-called successor. Because of this, the gap between him and the other younger generation of the Mo clan wasn't too big. Many of the younger generation of the Mo clan coveted his position. Although Mo Tianlin didn't care about this position, he knew that if someone else took his position, then he might not be able to enjoy the things that he currently enjoyed in the future. At this time, Xie Xiaolu and Ying Baihu exchanged blows. Under the violent fluctuations, the smoke and dust dispersed. Ying Baihu's complexion was deathly pale, while Xie Xiaolu's mouth was already bleeding. Even his right arm was slightly trembling. Clearly, the injury wasn't light. Ying Baihu's eyes revealed a trace of anger and humiliation. After the exchange, it was obvious that Ying Baihu won, but his victory was somewhat forced. He originally planned to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, but now, facing Xie Xiaolu, whose strength was far inferior to his, he was in such a sorry state. This was clearly different from what he had planned. Just when Ying Baihu was about to attack again, Xie Xiaolu, who was facing him, directly said, "I admit defeat." Xie Xiaolu's 3 words were said without the slightest hesitation. He was only here to stall for time and temper his own strength. There was no need for him to fight Ying Baihu to the death. Ying Baihu, who was about to attack, paused again. This caused his face to turn red. In the end, he could only coldly snort and withdraw his step. Luo Jianyan stood up and said in a deep voice, "Is there anyone else who wants to go up?" Everyone present looked at each other. With the strength that Ying Baihu had displayed just now, who would dare to go up and court death? Especially since Ying Baihu seemed to be in a fit of anger. His attacks were quite ruthless. If they went up now, wouldn't they be helping him vent his anger? "Let me." Chu Xiu had a smile on his face as he walked up the stage step by step. Luo Jianyan narrowed his eyes as he looked at Chu Xiu. He knew that this group of people would definitely come out to cause trouble. But unexpectedly, Luo Jianyan didn't care. He just looked deeply at Chu Xiu and walked down the stage. Previously, Luo Jianyan was cheated by the Ying clan's people. He was also a veteran of the Jianghu for so many years. How could he not have any thoughts? If Chu Xiu wanted to cause trouble, then let him cause trouble. If Chu Xiu lost, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry into the Ying clan normally. If Chu Xiu won, then could Ying Bailu just watch as his younger brother was defeated and not make a move? If Ying Bailu made a move, Chu Xiu would lose without a doubt. At that time, Luo Feiheng would be able to marry Ying Bailu smoothly, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Luo Jianyan also thought of the worst outcome. The Ying clan would sit and watch as Ying Baihu was defeated by Chu Xiu, and Ying Bailu wouldn't make a move. But that didn't matter. At most, the Luo clan wouldn't marry into the Ying clan. Although the Luo clan's actions were somewhat untrustworthy, going back on their words in the end after agreeing to hold a martial arts competition for a spouse, in the pugilistic world, things like trustworthiness were just words. Even if the Luo clan were to publicly act shamelessly and refuse to marry off their daughter, what could Chu Xiu do to them? On the stage, Chu Xiu glanced at Ying Baihu and said, "Although you aren't seriously injured, you're a little exhausted. I won't take advantage of you, lest others say that I'm taking turns fighting you. Rest for a while first, then I'll make a move." As soon as these words came out, the crowd immediately felt that this Chu Xiu was quite considerate. He knew not to take advantage of others when they were down. But below, Nie Donglu looked at Chu Xiu with a frown. As the saying goes, the person who understands you the most is usually not a friend, but an enemy. Nie Donglu and Chu Xiu were enemies, and it wasn't just a day or two. So he clearly knew what kind of person Chu Xiu was. It wasn't too much to say that he was unscrupulous. Since when did Chu Xiu's character become so noble? Under normal circumstances, he should be hitting someone when they're down. So Nie Donglio's intuition told him that there was definitely something fishy going on. But he couldn't guess what Chu Xiu was thinking. On the stage, Ying Baihu took a deep look at Chu Xiu, then sat cross-legged on the ground to recover his internal energy. Chu Xiu was different from Xie Xiaolu. He was also at the 5 Qis origin stage. When Ying Baihu was still in seclusion in the Shangshui Ying clan, Chu Xiu was already fighting with experts at the Unity of Heaven and Man realm. And on the Longhu list, Chu Xiu was only after his brother defeated Bailu. Facing such an opponent, Ying Baihu couldn't help but be cautious. Of course, at the same time, Ying Baihu was also a little excited. As long as he could defeat Chu Xiu face to face, he would be ranked 6th on the Longhu list. He would be 1 step closer to his brother's position. About a quarter of an hour later, Ying Baihu stood up. His breathing had completely calmed down. Chu Xiu held the saber in his hand and asked, "Is it done?" Ying Baihu nodded his head. But just as Ying Baihu nodded, Chu Xiu's saber had already been unsheathed. Boundless demonic energy intertwined with the baleful blood energy. The saber light of dozens of zhong almost penetrated the entire stage. When the saber slashed down, the demonic might was monstrous. The might of Chu Xiu's saber was simply terrifying. Even the move that Ying Baihu and Xia Xiaolu used just now couldn't compare to Chu Xiu's saber. Even after seeing this saber, Ying Baihu, who was sitting below, suddenly sat up straight and said in a deep voice, "He lost. Baihu has already lost. Who is this Chu Xiu?" Uncle Fu said in a deep voice behind Ying Baihu. "This kid came from the underworld. I heard that he was a rogue cultivator and an assassin of the Blue Dragon Society. Finally, he joined the Guanzhong torture room and became the Guanxi torture room. His momentum on the Longhu list is like a hot knife cutting through butter. He is a dark horse and not a simple character. Second young master's chances of winning this time are indeed not high." Chapter 443. Xia Xiaolu and Chu Xiu both used sabers, but Ying Baihu could block Xia Xiaolu's saber, while Chu Xiu's saber was something Ying Baihu didn't even have the courage to block. Under the roaring saber aura, Ying Baihu's first choice was to retreat, and block. The black astral energy around his body condensed into the shape of a dragon, coiling around him. As Chu Xiu's saber aura slashed down, the black astral energy was torn apart, and the powerful demonic qi entered his body. Ying Baihu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood, and a look of shock appeared in his eyes. This was a complete suppression in terms of strength. Both sides were not on the same level. No matter how Ying Baihu tried to block, it was useless. Ying Bailu shook his head and said, "Baihu's combat experience is too little. In the family, Uncle Fu and the others have been feeding him moves, but you've never dealt a fatal blow. Similarly, Baihu also knows that you won't deal a fatal blow to him. Now that he's fighting with someone, he subconsciously chose the safest way to deal with it. He doesn't know that this is the biggest taboo in a battle between cultivators. My Ying clan's royal heavenly treasure records is firm and imposing, advancing with indomitable will. Now that he's choosing to retreat and defend, he's already at a disadvantage. Especially when his opponent is someone like Chu Xiu, who's also firm and fierce. If he takes a step back, he won't be able to go back." Uncle Fu said in a low voice behind Ying Bailu, "But if he doesn't take a step back, second young master will definitely lose." Ying Bailu lightly pointed at his chest and said indifferently, "Cultivators advance with indomitable will. He took a step back, but what he's afraid of is his own heart. Although we should try our best to avoid putting ourselves in danger, once we start fighting with our lives on the line, we can't have the slightest thought of retreating. Now that I'm here and Uncle Fu is here, Baihu still doesn't dare to fight with his life on the line. What he lacks now isn't strength, but a heart that advances with indomitable will." Uncle Fu shook his head at the side. Eldest young master could see everything clearly, but unfortunately, not everyone was like eldest young master. But in other words, if second young master had eldest young master's state of mind and strength, would eldest young master still be so calm? Thinking of this, Uncle Fu didn't dare to think about it anymore. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he had been a servant of the Ying clan for generations. Without the Shongshui Ying clan, he would not have his current strength. Moreover, a martial Dao grandmaster like him did not have much of an advantage over Ying Bailu. Uncle Fu had spent his entire life to reach this level, whereas Ying Bailu was destined to become a grandmaster in the future. He might even be able to climb even higher and become an expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm, or even the legendary supreme martial artist. At this moment, Ying Baihu, who had been severely injured by Chu Xiu's saber, was indeed like what Ying Bailu had said. After taking a step back, he no longer had a chance to move forward. The saber technique in Chu Xiu's hand surged forward, forcing Ying Baihu to block it bitterly. Ying Baihu was nearly blasted off the arena by Chu Xiu as the demonic saber swung out. At this moment, Ying Baihu had completely abandoned the idea of defeating Chu Xiu. He just wanted to not lose so badly. However, under Chu Xiu's demonic saber, Ying Baihu was gradually unable to resist. A ruthless look appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he wanted to fight with his life on the line. As Ying Baihu performed a hand seal, a wisp of blood qi in his body surged into the earth energy around him. The majestic earth energy directly condensed into a ferocious black dragon. However, the dragon's eyes were stained with 2 smears of crimson, making it look extremely real. The black earth energy dragon stretched for hundreds of feet. Not to mention the 5 Chi's origin realm, even among the unity of heaven and man realm martial artists, There were very few martial artists who could have such a degree of earth energy. However, at this moment, a strange divine light bloomed in Chu Xiu's eyes. Under Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air, the power structure of the earth energy dragon was revealed in detail. As Chu Xiu's saber descended, the saber technique was not as ferocious and domineering as before. It appeared light, but it slashed down at the earth energy dragon at a strange angle like an antelope hanging its horn. The crimson light in the eyes of the astral energy dragon shattered completely, and its huge body crumbled, turning into astral energy that scattered in all directions. The powerful backlash caused Ying Baihu to spit out a mouthful of blood, and an expression of disbelief appeared on his face. This was the Ying clan's royal heavenly treasure record secret technique, Dragon's Finishing Touch. It only had a form when condensed from earth energy, but when one used their own qi, blood, and martial intent to add eyes to the earth energy dragon, it would allow an invisible object to display a world-shaking transformation. In the end, his secret technique was defeated by Chu Xiu the moment he used it. Furthermore, it was defeated in such an inexplicable manner that he didn't even know how he had lost. Chu Xiu's figure did not move. He waved his hand, and as the demonic aura surged, Ying Baihu's qi and blood began to churn. Under the great demonic blood technique, Ying Baihu could not even control the power of his qi and blood. However, he still had some foundation after all. He would not be like other warriors, who would have his qi and blood drawn out by Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique so easily. He gritted his teeth and tried to suppress the churning qi and blood in his body with a ferocious expression. However, he soon discovered that no matter what he did, the qi and blood in his body were boiling even more violently. It was as if his qi and blood no longer belonged to him. Ying Baihu's expression did not change in the slightest as he watched his younger brother suffer such a miserable defeat at the hands of Chu Xiu. He simply said to Fu Bo, "Fu Bo, make your move. Baihu has received enough of the lesson and tempering he deserves. If this continues, his qi and blood will be damaged and his foundation will be damaged." Fu Bo nodded. His figure moved, and in the next moment, he appeared in front of Ying Baihu. He patted Ying Baihu's shoulder lightly, and in an instant, a powerful force surged into Ying Baihu's body, completely isolating Chu Xiu's great demonic blood technique. "Young man, when it is possible to let people go, one should forgive them. If you go too far, you won't have a good ending." Fu Bo looked deeply at Chu Xiu and said lightly. Chu Xiu withdrew his great demonic blood technique and shrugged. "Anyone who enters the arena must be prepared to be killed. No one will show mercy in the arena of life and death. If he had admitted defeat, I would have stopped. However, it seems that the people of your Ying clan do not have the habit of admitting defeat. In that case, don't blame me for not holding back. Besides, who said that going too far won't have a good ending? In my opinion, if you don't go too far, you'll only bring endless trouble in the future. Of course, you're a senior, and the words of a senior always make sense." Fu Bo snorted coldly after being stabbed by Chu Xiu's words. He directly grabbed Ying Baihu and turned to leave. If Chu Xiu dared to speak to other martial Dao grandmasters like this, they would definitely teach Chu Xiu a lesson. However, Fu Bo's primary identity was a servant of the Ying clan, and his secondary identity was a martial Dao grandmaster. As long as Ying Baihu did not say anything, he would not make a move against Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu stood on the arena, calmly looking around. In truth, he did not use much strength to defeat Ying Baihu. Ying Baihu came from the Shongshui Ying clan, so he had a solid foundation and a high cultivation base. Unfortunately, his combat experience was too lacking, which led to his poor combat strength. Combat experience was something that could only be tempered through life and death battles. Even if one didn't step into the Jianghu, some big sects would have some dangerous secret realms that could allow their disciples to experience life and death battles. That way they could train themselves. However, Ying Baihu had clearly not experienced this kind of tempering. He only thought that he could obtain great strength by cultivating diligently. This was true. If he encountered a cultivator like Xie Xiaolu who was weaker than him, Ying Baihu could naturally crush his opponent with pure strength. But if he faced someone like Chu Xiu who was stronger than him in both strength and combat strength, the process would be reversed, and it would be Chu Xiu suppressing him. Ying Bailu looked at Ying Baihu, who had a look of disbelief on his face, and said indifferently, "Didn't you want to challenge me? You can't even take this little setback?" You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth until you step into the Zhonghu. Do you really think that the people on the Longhu list are useless? With your strength, you can barely beat Xie Xiaolu, who is one level lower than you. There are also warriors in the three-flower realm in the top 10 of the Longhu list. Although you are one level higher than them, you may not be able to beat them. Ying Baihu stood silently behind Ying Bailu. However, from the way he clenched his fists tightly, it wasn't hard to tell that he would have to train hard after returning to the Ying clan. He wanted to catch up to Ying Bailu as soon as possible. At this time, on the arena, Luo Jianyan looked at Ying Baihu. However, Ying Baihu did not have the slightest intention of making a move, which made Luo Jianyan a little anxious. What did Ying Baihu mean by this? Did he really look down on Luo Feiheng? Moreover, his younger brother had been crushed by Chu Xiu. Didn't he want to take revenge for his younger brother? Even Uncle Fu hesitated behind Ying Baihu and transmitted his voice. Young master, are you really not going to make a move? If you make a move, no one here can beat you. Luo Feiheng is 100% yours, young master. Although the Luo family of Wu County has declined greatly, you also said that Luo Feiheng is a bright pearl. Her future is limitless. Ying Baihu shook his head and said, Luo Feiheng is a bright pearl, but unfortunately, she is not the pearl in my heart. Therefore, I can't take this pearl away. Uncle Fu, there is no need to say more. You know how I feel. My family and father will not interfere with my decision. Uncle Fu sighed. Young master was the most outstanding youth he had seen in his life. In Uncle Fu's opinion, even the celestial master abodes Zhang Qingzhen and the great light temple's wisdom monarch Zhongshuan could not compare to young master. One could only draw talismans, while the other could only chant scriptures. However, it was a pity that he could not obtain the pearl in young master's heart. The female disciples of the Yu Nu Palace never married outside. Even if they did, they would not have a good ending. Not to mention that Yan Fian was the most outstanding disciple of the Yu Nu Palace in this generation. She was also the successor of the Yu Nu Palace. Even if Yan Fian and Ying Baihu were in love, the Yu Nu Palace would not let her go. Moreover, Uncle Fu had seen Yan Fian once. In his opinion, that little girl was not easy to deal with. She had too many schemes in her heart. On the contrary, someone like Luo Feiheng was a good match. Chapter 444. Ying Bailu didn't want to make a move. Chu Xiu stood proudly in front of the crowd, but no one made a sound. Based on the strength Chu Xiu displayed just now, who would dare to court death? Nie Donglu was Chu Xiu's old rival. He had already lost to Chu Xiu last time, so he naturally wouldn't jump out and make trouble for himself. If he didn't have absolute confidence, Nie Donglu wouldn't fight Chu Xiu head-on. As for Eastern Cheese Li Yuan, although he said he would teach Chu Xiu a lesson to avenge the crown prince, he wasn't an idiot. He knew his own strength and knew that he couldn't beat Chu Xiu one-on-one. It was more likely that he would cause trouble for Chu Xiu in secret. So for a moment, the crowd was silent. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Luo Jianyan and said with a smile, I say, Senior Luo, it looks like there's no one here who wants to participate. In that case, I'm the victor of this joust for a spouse search competition, right? Luo Jianyan looked at Ying Bailu, but the latter didn't seem to see him. He had no intention of making a move. This time, Luo Jianyan finally understood. He could be considered a veteran, but this time, he was tricked by Ying Bailu. No wonder when they contacted the Ying Enterprises, they didn't mention anything like an engagement. Instead, they insisted on holding a joust for a spouse. As long as there was no engagement, the Ying Enterprises could advance or retreat as they pleased. But the Luo family was trapped here. Luo Jianyan looked at Chu Xiu and frowned. Chu Xiu, don't make trouble here. So what if you win this round? Don't think I don't know the relationship between you two. You're just good friends. Are you really going to marry Luo Feiheng? Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, Who says that good friends can't marry? She treats me as a good friend, but now I want to treat Feiheng as my lover. Can't I? We are all young people. Isn't it normal to fall in love with each other? Or do you think that I, Chu Xiu, am not worthy of your Luo family, or are you going to go back on your words? Chu Xiu's series of rhetorical questions were reasonable, but Luo Jianyan waved his hand and snorted coldly. Chu Xiao, you're just making trouble. This matter does not count. The joust for a spouse is temporarily suspended. Everyone present could see that Luo Jianyan was acting shamelessly. It was just a family. Even if a martial Dao grandmaster went back on his word, what could you do to him? Could he forcefully take Luo Feiheng away? However, at this moment, Luo Feiheng, who had been sitting quietly in the Luo clan's side, suddenly opened his eyes and said, Luo Jianyan, do you really treat me as a commodity? You didn't sell me for a good price, so you're looking for an opportunity to sell me again? Luo Tianyong's face sank as he shouted, How dare you? How dare you call the ancestor by his name? Hurry up and apologize to the ancestor. Luo Feiheng sneered, Apologize, Luo Tianyong. From the day you attacked me, I no longer have anything to do with the Luo clan. From now on, you and I are strangers. As for this old fart, I'm giving him face by calling him by his name. The previous generation of the Luo clan was still tolerable, but it was his generation that caused the Luo clan to decline to this state. To think he still has the nerve to live. If it were me, I would have killed myself and gone back to apologize to my ancestors. One had to admit that Luo Feiheng's mouth was really vicious. Luo Jianyan's face was as gloomy as water at this moment. He shouted in a low voice, Break his legs and throw him into the ancestral hall to repent to his ancestors. The Luo clan doesn't have such an unfilial disciple. However, at this moment, Luo Feiheng's lips curled into a sneer. Ancestral hall? I'm afraid from today onward, you won't throw any disciple into the ancestral hall to repent. As he spoke, Luo Feiheng suddenly stretched out his left hand. Previously, Luo Feiheng was sitting there with his eyes closed. His left hand was also shrouded in the sleeve of his robe, so no one noticed it. Only now did they realize that Luo Feiheng's left hand was actually holding a transparent, amber ball that was stained with Luo Feiheng's blood. After absorbing Luo Feiheng's blood, the ball was actually covered with blood vessels and looked a little evil. Seeing the ball, the expressions of Luo Jianyan, Luo Tianyong, and some of the Luo clan's elders changed. Luo Jianyan shouted, Why is the ancestral relic in your hands? Upon hearing this, everyone immediately turned to look at the ancestral relic in Luo Feiheng's hand. So this was the Luo clan's legendary ancestral relic. Each of the 9 great families had at least a few hundred years of heritage, so they naturally had some trump cards. The Luo clan was naturally the same. Among them, the Luo clan was most famous for this ancestral relic. It was said that the Luo clan's ancestor was once a monk. Of course, he was not a monk from the Great Light Temple or the Sabodhi Monastery. In the end, the Luo clan's ancestor was a monk for more than 10 years before he suddenly converted to Taoism and became a Taoist priest for more than 10 years. Only then did he suddenly renounce asceticism, get married, have children, and establish the Luo clan. Therefore, the Luo clan's cultivation method was very interesting. It could be considered to be a dual cultivation of Taoism and Buddhism, but the traces of each were not obvious. This ancestral relic was formed from the Luo clan's ancestor's cultivation when he passed away. He also used the formation techniques he learned in Taoism to set up a large formation that could attack, defend, and cultivate in the entire Luo clan's mansion. This large formation could be used for both attack and defense. Usually, it would condense a strong qi of heaven and earth at a specific location for the Luo clan's disciples to cultivate. It could be said to be an all-rounder. The core of this large formation was this ancestral relic. It was usually enshrined in the Luo clan's ancestral hall. No one expected it to fall into the hands of Luo Feiheng. Holding the ancestral relic, Luo Feiheng smirked and said, How did you get it? Have you forgotten who locked me up in the ancestral hall? Hearing this, Luo Jianyan and the other elders of the Luo clan trembled with anger. This was not because they were careless, but because they did not expect Luo Feiheng to be so rebellious. Things like the ancestral relic were guaranteed to be enshrined in the ancestral hall. After all, for a family, the ancestral hall was the place where they enshrined their ancestors. It was the absolute central area and the most sacred place. If the Luo clan was attacked by external enemies and the attack reached the ancestral hall, it would be a disaster that would destroy the entire clan. Therefore, the ancestral hall was the safest place for the Luo clan. Moreover, as a disciple of the Luo clan, they should know what the ancestral relic represented. Who would dare to touch it? What Luo Feiheng did was basically the same as digging up his own ancestral grave. Luo Feiheng sneered and played with the ancestral relic in his hand. He said coldly, "This thing is now in my hand and has been completely soaked in my blood. Moreover, you should know where this place is located in the entire Luo clan's large formation. What do you think will happen if I crush the ancestral relic here?" Luo Jianyan's expression suddenly changed. They were currently in the courtyard of the Luo clan's front hall, which was also covered by the Luo clan's large formation. This place was where the life gate of the Luo clan's large formation was located. Without the core of the formation, the Luo clan's large formation would not be able to be activated. However, they could find something else to replace it in the future. However, if Luo Feiheng directly crushed the ancestral relic here, the life gate of the formation would also be broken, and the entire formation of the Luo family would be destroyed. This was equivalent to destroying a life-saving trump card of the Luo family. How dare you! If you dare to touch the ancestral relic, you will definitely not be able to take half a step out of the Luo clan. Luo Jianyan gritted his teeth and spat out these words. He really did not expect Luo Feiheng to be so rebellious. She actually dared to use the ancestral relic to threaten him. At this time, Chu Xiao and the others also stood up and stood beside Luo Feiheng. Their attitude was obvious. Previously, Luo Feiheng had already told them the plan and asked them to help stall for time. Meanwhile, she would stay at the life gate of the large formation and use her blood to completely control the ancestral relic. This thing was only a dead object. In theory, as long as a martial artist had the Luo clan's bloodline, they could control it. If the Luo clan's patriarch could do it, then so could she. Of course, after doing this, Luo Feiheng would definitely break off relations with the Luo clan. It might even escalate to the point where one of them would die. Moreover, Chu Xiao and the others could also be said to have offended the Luo clan. In the original plot, Luo Feiheng only crippled Luo Feiyun and broke off relations with the Luo clan. However, it could not be considered as a fight to the death. However, this time, Luo Feiheng played it big enough. He directly wanted to destroy the entire Luo clan's foundation. Luo Jianyan looked at Chu Xiao and the others standing beside Luo Feiheng. He first said to Mo Yezi coldly, "Mo Yezi, you and I can be considered old friends. This is my Luo clan's matter. Do you really want to get involved?" Mo Yezi said indifferently, "Luo Jianyan, don't mess up our friendship. I have nothing to do with you. Your Luo clan's previous leader, Luo Shiming, is a character who once helped me. That's why I agreed to refine a weapon for your Luo clan. However, the blood spear red kite has already been refined. Naturally, our friendship is over. Now, you're trying to force the owner of the blood spear red kite to leave. Who do you think I should help? Moreover, this time, your Luo clan is too incompetent. You want to rely on marriage to extend the clan's future? Isn't that ridiculous? I hit it off with Feiheng. I have to intervene in this matter." Luo Jianyan turned his gaze to Chu Xiao and the others. They also had a fearless look on their faces. Xie Xiaolu was backed by a fierce person like Chen Qingdi. Moreover, the power behind him was in West Chu. To put it bluntly, without Luo Feiheng, he didn't care about the Luo clan at all. If Luo Jianyan wanted to demand an explanation from the Heaven Alliance, he would most likely be punched out by Chen Qingdi. Emperor Chen Qingdi had always been this domineering when it came to helping those close to him. As for Chu Xiao, not to mention the fact that he was secretly a member of the Yinma clan and had a powerful backing, even on the surface, the Guanzhong torture room was far more powerful than the Luo clan. The only one who had some concerns was Mo Tianlin. However, for Mo Tianlin, since he had already made up his mind, he would at most resist this matter. Anyway, although the Mo clan wasn't strong, they were still stronger than the Luo clan. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.